His wife said he had a surgery. This session of the Abandoned Planning Commission is in session at 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Orsi,
Here.
Vice Chair Jerkowski, Chair Starbuck,
Here.
Commissioner Norman,
Here.
Commissioner Frey,
Here.
Commissioner Pressler.
Here.
Okay, I would also like to acknowledge that Catherine Scobie has resigned. We wish her well. Before we go to the consent agenda, I want to make one change to the public hearings. I want to move 5.5 to the second place. So if you would, in the motion for the consent agenda, please include that as a change.
Someone should move to adopt.
I move we adopt the consent agenda.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public comment from the comments from the public on any item not on the agenda limited to 5 minutes each. To comment in person, please sign in and return form to the clerk. And if participating via Zoom, raise your hand at the beginning of the public comment period. Public comments and information provided during the meeting will be collected and retained by the city as a public record in accordance with Oregon Revised Statutes, Public Records Policy 192.005 to 192.170 and 357.805 to 357.895, with some exceptions. Any public comment? All right, moving on. We are into the public hearing phase. I declare this public hearing open at 07:03 p.m. this 24th day of April 2025. This is an official public hearing before the Planning Commission of the City of Bandon for planning application 25-008, a conditional use permit for the vacation rental dwelling at 1470 Beach Loop Drive, which is a property in the controlled development zone in the City of Bandon. And applicable substantive criteria are contained in the staff report. Please address your comments to these criteria or the criteria you believe to apply to this decision. Official notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission can consider laws, ordinances, court decisions, etc., without having them established as evidence in the hearing record. Record of proceedings, a copy of these minutes and of this hearing will be available in the city offices. A copy of the rules and procedures I am reading will be available in the city offices as part of this file. Are there any objections? Are there any objections in the audience who wish to challenge whether it is proper for the Planning Commission to hold this hearing? Okay. Are there any commissioners present who wish to declare ex parte contact, site visit, feel they may have conflict of interest, bias, or other reasons to be disqualified for participation in this hearing?
No.
I did a site visit today, apart from the group last week.
All right. This is for VRD.
Oh, excuse me. I did a site visit today anyway.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to challenge any of the commissioners' qualifications to participate in this hearing? Seeing none, staff report.
Making sounds.
Hello?
Oh, okay, yeah, so it is on.
Okay, so this is weird. Okay, so we have a conditional use permit request for a vacation rental dwelling. The address is 1470 Beach Loop Drive. The property owners live at 1470 Beach Loop Drive, is in the CD1 zone. The house was built in 2000. It is currently 2,450 square feet. They are seeking approval to operate a two-bedroom VRD with a maximum occupancy of 6 guests. The saturation report that was done in October of 2024 provided an 18.75% saturation rate. There's no beach access from the property, but we will discuss that further as there is a staircase going down to the beach. This is the beach access. I provided you with an email from the property owners. They use the beach access for maintenance and to access the beach, but they have advised us that they will be closing off the stairwell with this picture of the doorway. So no access to the beach will be permitted for the guests at the vacation rental. And this is what it would look like going down the stairwell. This is the property location right here. The off-street parking, so they have a unique situation with this concrete parking deck, which does allow for 2 vehicles. No street parking is available in front of the dwelling, however. The Coos County Assessor has placed the dwelling as a 3-bedroom. You can see the loft is what's used as a 3rd bedroom, but is utilized as an office currently. They do not wish to have that as a bedroom due to the privacy factor. So their request is only for 2 bedrooms. We recommend approval with the conditions that are standard, and the only additional 2 that I found, there was no floor plan furnished that showed location of smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors. So that would be placed as a condition of approval, that they would have to submit a floor plan showing the location of those. And the number of guests is restricted to 6. I anticipated there might be some questions about the staircase with access, so we can adjust that condition of approval if you guys want to discuss that further. So we can remove that in the final conditions or amend it however you feel is necessary. So the recommended motion is to adopt the findings of the staff report if you so choose, and just discuss further the conditions about the stairwell if that was something. And we do have the applicant, the property owner's applicant representative is Crystal, or she's here as well, who can possibly answer questions that I can't. So, any questions?
I have a question regarding the stairs.
Yes.
So when I was there today, looked like there was at one time a stairway at the south end of the parking pad. Because there was lots of, I know there was some question about the condition of the stairs, et cetera.
Yes.
So I just wanted some clarity. So to the north of the parking pad is the stairway which goes down to the house. And then there's a walkway to the south end of the house. And then these stairs, I assume, are going down the south end of the stairs.
Yeah. Are you
Okay.
referring to the stairs to the north that access from the concrete parking deck to the dwelling? Or are you referring to another set of stairs?
No, there's only
Okay.
one set of
Okay.
stairs. So I'm just saying that it looked like there was, in the material that we got, there was mention about the stairs being in disrepair.
Yeah, they stated they are not in disrepair. So
Right.
and that was the picture they provided to show that it was in good condition from the beach access down.
Right.
So
So where will the gate be?
they are saying that it's at the top of the enclosure. So it looks like this would be, if I didn't put this one on the agenda, but in one of their pictures they submitted for that, which was provided to you in the additional email, it looks like from the I'm guessing it's one of the hallways. Cause you can see. It's a long hallway, which looks like it's then the enclosure. So somewhere from the bottom floor.
Okay,
Do you see that?
Yeah, see
Okay,
that.
So the key will not be accessible to guests.
the key,
Yeah.
they did not
There's-
indicate a
There's a key
key.
in the lock right now.
Okay, yeah. You can request that they provide information on that. I don't have any information on where the key will be
Okay,
located, other than the door latch.
all right. Any other questions?
I would just, not a question so much, just based on a public comment received on the parking situation there, the VRD is requesting or providing 2 off-street parking spaces, which is in code compliance, and also limiting the number of tenants or vacationers to 3 per bedroom, which I believe is also in compliance with our code.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
I had a question about the staircase to the beach. I saw a comment in the staff report that said, I guess that was not ever permitted, or is that correct?
It is an unpermitted structure. That is correct.
So why wouldn't we have them remove that? Well, I would just be afraid that if this property sold in the future and they see the remnants of that staircase, and they might think that, oh, well, there was one there before, so we can build another. Is that not a concern?
I'll let Dana take the lead on that one. I think that could be something you guys discuss as a commission.
Yeah, I can just hop in here and say our code does say that, if a structure is unpermitted, we do have the right to tell people to take it out. And so because generally the city has not proactively gone after these unpermitted staircases, but because they are applying for a permit for a conditional use, I think that you could set a condition of approval that the unpermitted staircase be removed prior to the start of occupancy.
And that would be my recommendation, to add that as a condition.
Dana, if the applicant, if the owner wanted, is it possible to bring the stairs up to code, or is it a requirement that the unpermitted structure be entirely removed and reconstructed?
Bill, you're asking all the right questions. So the city's view line ordinance doesn't permit structures past the line of the main structure, pretty much. So that view line, nothing is permitted past that that line. So in my opinion, they could not apply for an after the fact permit because we would not permit structure west of that line.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anything else? All right. The nature of this hearing is to be orderly and courteous. When it is your turn to testify, please speak clearly and state your name for the record. The hearing will be conducted as follows. The applicant will first be granted 20 minutes. Testimony from the public will be limited to 5 minutes per person. After all testimony is taken, the applicant will be given 10 minutes to follow up testimony. The Planning Commission will then close the public hearing and deliberate. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford this decision-making body and the parties involved an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. All right, we will hear from the applicant.
Hello, my name is Crystal Orr and I reside in Myrtle Point. I'm gonna try to keep it really short because the agenda looks pretty long. I represent the property owners Kazumari and Tomiko Hatsushi. They can't be here tonight because they have another obligation out of town. They bought this dwelling to be closer to their daughter. She lives in Corvallis, and when they retire, they plan on retiring in this home, but they just can't retire right now, so they would like to use it as a vacation rental until they can retire. I believe all the relevant criteria was addressed within the application. And I'm just interested in knowing if you have any questions. I do have to say, with the stairwell, I think my only concern is that they were required to have the drainage. And so the only way that they could really fix that drainage that goes from pretty much from their house down to the beach would be through that stairwell. There's no other way to access it. And then if there were a fire in like the lower level, I don't know how they'd get out other than jumping out the window. You know, so a stairwell does provide a way to get out in case of emergency. I mean, as you can see from the house that it's like built on a cliff. So I mean, it is going to be locked and the owner will have the key for that, but I'm guessing in an emergency, somebody could break it, you know, to get out.
But it could also be used for beach access, right?
It could, but it actually doesn't go all the way to the beach. It stops.
How far does it go?
It goes, there's an extra like 30 feet that they'd have to build on to even get to the beach. I think. I went down it. It was definitely not somewhere where you could jump down there. I mean, I wouldn't. Maybe somebody would, but
Okay.
I know from down below, I've never seen the staircase where it would end down below.
it's not there, yeah. I think that's why they thought it was in disrepair because they had asked about it and I said it actually doesn't go down to the beach, that a portion of it had been removed because it got damaged by, I think, a high tide or something. So it's far enough that that the tide doesn't even reach it when it's at its highest.
That's a problem with all stairs that go down to the beach. At some point in time, they get beat up.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused about you saying that it's, I'm sorry. A little confused about you saying that it would be a safety concern to not have the staircase, but yet it doesn't really go down. Like, it doesn't sound like it gives you some place to actually exit safely.
The stairs aren't really that high, so they're not very high from the ground.
Okay.
So you could get off the stairs and be
Alright.
on the ground,
Okay.
yeah. But at the bottom, it's actually more cliffy towards the bottom where the beach is. It's a little bit more drop, but there are spaces where you could get out.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And can I hop in and add to what you were just saying? I think another issue with the staircase and them just ending is that there's also an Ocean Shores Recreation Area that's an easement between like the beach and private property. And what we've seen a lot throughout Bandon is the staircases are often built into that easement. So we probably wouldn't be the hardest place to get a permit through, but OPRD, the Oregon Parks and Rec Department, they do require permits for any sort of construction or structures on the beach, which is also likely why they couldn't rebuild it at that time.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
So the options basically are keep the stairway as it is, remove it. And if you remove it, it can't be rebuilt anyway. Is that what you're saying, Dana?
I'm saying in this, on the land that the city has control over, that area, the view line would apply. So until such a time that ordinance is modified to allow for stairs to the beach, we currently don't permit that. And if they did want to build any more stairs, they would have to likely get a permit from OPRD for a new structure, which I hear is hard.
Yeah, other questions? You're through?
Unless you have any questions.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the audience who wish to speak on this issue? Yes,
I've forgotten. Can you ask questions?
you're part of the audience, Claudia.
Okay. Um, was there or was there not a limit placed on the number of vacation rentals that we are permitting?
The city has an ordinance that regulates the number of vacation rentals by a saturation rate. So we just try to spread them out. So there isn't like a set in stone number total. It's just you can't have more than 30% of a 250-foot area around the house already be vacation rentals. So we just try to limit the number that are all close to each other, try to spread them out.
Okay. And has this traditionally been a vacation rental property prior to this current?
Nikki, do you know the answer to that?
I do not.
I don't believe, no, it was not previously a vacation rental.
Okay, those were the two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Any other? All right. Do the applicant have it, or you want any rebuttal or follow-up testimony? All right. Have it your way. Does staff have any comments or information to add at this time?
The only thing that I could add is if you are torn about whether or not to require removal of the stairs, I think that this is one of those times where, because there's another sort of point in time that we check in, your condition could say something like the stairs are either removed or come into compliance prior to occupancy. If there is a possible pathway for them. I don't know that there is.
And so coming into compliance would involve another agency? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Got it. That sounds expensive, potentially.
I wouldn't know, but I would assume, also the stairs, that anything on the ocean front requires a geologic assessment review as well, so.
Right, right.
Are we satisfied? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
I second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Okay, deliberations, commissioners.
Well,
You
I
can
like,
continue
I
the
like-
hearing,
I
or
like Dana's suggestion of a condition is either they have to come into compliance on the staircase or it has to be removed prior to occupancy. And then I agree with all the other conditions of approval that staff has recommended.
okay.
I have to agree with that as well.
Okay. Then you want to make a motion?
I don't know if we're finished discussing.
Okay,
Do you have anything to add?
And my closest concern is with the parking, actually, because it's one place where you can't have any additional parking. But because they only have 2 bedrooms that they're using, they do meet the code.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, is there any street parking in the
No.
immediate
No.
vicinity? There isn't.
No, there isn't.
No. Okay.
And I'll just add too, the code does not allow folks staying in a vacation rental to park on the street, even if there was street parking.
Thank you very much for that reminder. Okay, well,
Any other comments? Hearing none? I would, is there a motion for this?
I move that we approve
Well,
the application.
let me ask one question to Dana. So if the staircase does not go all the way, the easement only goes, that you're talking about, would only go so far, correct? So
Yes, that's correct.
So under my initial or what you initially said, they could take out the staircase until it gets to that easement and then they'd be in compliance. Is that what I'm understanding or no?
Well, it would still be in violation of our view line ordinance. So
Okay.
if during this time before they begin occupancy, the city resolves the view line issue.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just had that question before we had a motion. So
Okay,
I would move that we grant the approval with the conditions recommended by staff, as well as the staircase access down to the beach either has to come into compliance or be removed prior to occupancy.
I second that.
Can I bother you to amend your motion to also include adopting the findings in the staff report?
Yes, I will make that that additional
Thank
as
you.
part of my motion.
all right, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit, including findings and amendments to the staircase. Roll call, please.
I think, did you get a second?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Okay, Commissioner Orsi,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jerkowski,
Aye.
Commissioner Norman,
Aye.
Commissioner Frey,
Yes,
Commissioner Pressler.
Yes.
All right, motion passed. Now we come to a nice one. I can just open the public hearing for this, right?
Sorry, yes, you can.
All right,
I think there's in your opening.
right, I got it.
Okay,
I now declare this public hearing open. Open. That's the only part I have to, okay, all right. I now declare a public hearing open at 5:27 PM on, again, April 24th, 2025. This is a public hearing about the before the Planning Commission of the City of Bandon for application 25-012, a request to rezone a portion of the tax lot 201 from natural resources to residential 1. Applicable criteria related to this action are listed in the staff report, available online through the city's website and as part of tonight's meeting agenda. Please address your comments to these criteria or the criteria you believe apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford this decision-making body and the parties involved an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal based on this issue. Official notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission can consider laws, ordinances, court decisions, etc., without having them established as evidence in the hearing record. A copy of the minutes of this hearing, as well as the rules and procedures, will be available in the city offices. Staff report.
all right, thanks. And Nikki, can you pull up my presentation? So for my presentation tonight, I've got mostly images for you, but I'll start by just sort of describing why we're here talking about this. So the city was approached by the property owner's representative looking for more information about why this property was zoned natural resources, sort of what happened. And I believe this was a number of years ago. I began digging into our files right here. There's a lot of them. I couldn't find any history of this particular rezone that would have dedicated this parcel as natural resources. I didn't feel like it was my decision, so we brought it to you this evening as a legislative amendment. Partially because, or I should say, usually when we have a rezone that's particular to one property, we do it as a quasi judicial decision. However, because this sort of has larger policy implications, because it may or may not have ever been legally rezoned, we decided to do it as a type 4 decision. So it's a recommendation from the Planning Commission and ultimately a decision of the City Council. So if you can go to the next slide. So the property, as far as we can tell currently, our current zone map shows it as split zoned residential 1 and natural resources. The applicant is requesting rezoning from natural resources to R1. Again, we've kind of concluded that there's this sort of nebulous period, and I'll go through all of the maps that I can find to try to show you how we've come to this conclusion that we're unsure if it was ever legally rezoned. So next slide. The first image I have up here is the abandoned comprehensive plan map that is from 1990. It's not too big here, but what you can see is at the time that this map was created, this area was not platted. So it's really hard to figure out where exactly the lines are. It's sort of this general image, but there aren't a lot of indicators to figure out what was designated as what back then. So the best that we can assume here is that it's part of it is controlled development. I think part of it is planned residential and part of it is open space. And then next slide. The first map I can find on this property is in 1982. And for those of you who asked previously, the property was purchased in 1989. So when the property was purchased by the current property owner, the entire lot was zoned controlled development 1. Next slide. Then in 1993, Ordinance 1314 was passed. Of course, we have a file for every ordinance except for this one. I cannot find it. But there is lots of zone change information here. It's just not as well organized as the other files. But through Ordinance 1314, the property was rezoned. There was a portion of it that retained that controlled development 1 zone, a large section that was rezoned to residential 1. And then as you can see on the east side of the property, there was a portion that was retained for natural resources. Everyone remember where this property is because this is going to come up in a couple slides. So the next one is we have another zoning map that we can reference that shows this change mostly in 1994. You can see that the natural resource zone on the east side is not there. Also, we have a kind of funny line that appeared delineating the CD1 zone from the R1 zone, which is not how that other map looked.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. But you need to.
It would be
remain
wonderful
quiet.
to be able to see any of the things that you're presenting. On
Oh.
the Zoom,
Ask and
there's
answer.
absolutely nothing.
Have we screen shared? Maybe, thank you. We can, I can start over. Or we can quickly go through them.
Yeah, I had a technical difficulty cutting in.
Okay, I'll pause for a second. Okay, sure, yeah, I can go back. We can, sorry, everyone, we'll start
Turn
over.
it up.
Okay, can you start at the comprehensive plan map? Okay. It's hard to, I need like a mobile mic. Yeah, okay, so this is our comprehensive plan map. This is the general vicinity of the subject property. I've put in this red line as Seabird Drive, so that was like the closest I could get to sort of geolocate you here. So we believe that the area was partially controlled development 1, partially planned residential, and then partially open space. But again, these are all kind of like, you can see the looseness of the lines. So next slide. Okay, so this is the parcel in question. This is the subject lot. There have been a number of subdivisions, so it does look different now. It's really just the bottom half that we're talking about. The rest of it is Ocean Terrace subdivision. And when the property was purchased in 1989, this was the zoning in place at the time. And then next slide. So this is a map from the rezone that was ordinance 1314. A portion of it was retained as controlled development 1. A portion of it was rezoned to R1. And this bottom half is the part we're talking about now that has not been constructed yet. And then there is a section here on the east side of the property that was zoned natural resources. And that's the part I said, remember that part. Okay, next slide. So then this again is in 1994, we have another adopted zoning map that shows the subject property. You can see the natural resource zone is not there. And then this is sort of another funny section that I'm not sure where that line came from. Yeah, just kind of happened. And so the line here for R1 still follows the property line, not the bluff line. Next slide. Okay, and then the next map that we have that sort of identifies when this change was possibly made. So this is the Face Rock Golf Course that's south of the subject property. This is the subject property up here. You can see the line between natural resources and R1 has suddenly moved. This was another rezone where they swapped out some land natural resources for CB1. We don't know. It could be a mapping error because there's the issue is that we don't have any history of a legal rezone here. We're not sure how that line moved from where it was. And this is in 2006 through Ordinance 1559. So between Ordinance 1314 and Ordinance 1559, we did some research to try to figure out if there were any other rezones that happened during that time that could be related to this parcel, and we did not find anything. If anyone has seen anything, let me know. Okay, so next slide. So this is our zoning map today. It was created in 2009. It shows, again, the line has moved even further in, and then that same line is there, that weird one that sort of cuts across lots. Another odd one. And again, this parcel shows up that was supposed to be zoned natural resources, but it's R1. Next slide. For those of you who are asking, there was a subdivision that was approved on this site, and that is the plat that we approved for the subdivision. In 2025. Next slide. Okay, and then this is the map provided by the applicant that shows the area that should be rezoned. And next slide. Okay, so this one came about, thank you, Commissioner Frey, because he asked about the hazard overlay zone. And so this is the subject parcel. This area is clearly like the drop off from the bluff, and this is all the oranges, high likelihood of landslide susceptibility, which you'll see also comes up here into the city street and on these lots. Now, the next slide will show you that in 2019, the city approved a property line adjustment that took a lot that I believe should have been zoned natural resources and allowed a property line adjustment to create lots that now have houses on them. So this may be, again, a larger policy decision, something bigger than just a rezone. Okay, and next slide. I'm not sure if I have anything else. Oh, sorry, that's just an end slide. Okay. So, let me sit down now. So what we've come up with, unless anyone can tell us otherwise, is that I don't believe that this lot was ever legally rezoned to make any part of this southern parcel natural resources. I do think what this has uncovered is a larger issue with our zoning map, where we have potentially allowed houses on an area that should have been zoned natural resources. And there may be some other errors out there. I'm going to also remind you that we did something like this, something similar to this recently with the Moore Mill site. where we discovered that it was never legally rezoned to controlled development. One, it actually retained its heavy industrial zoning and comprehensive plan designation. In digging through the files for that one, we also were unable to ever uncover a legal rezone that what the city did because the applicant or the person, the property owners put together a very robust history of the property. The city council adopted that by resolution, memorializing the sort of history, the chaotic history of this non-rezone, just to revert it back to the original zoning. So the Planning Commission should hear from the audience, hear from the property owner's representative, and you might, at the end, we can come back and discuss it, but you might recommend to the city council that the case be dismissed and the zoning map be reverted if we do in fact find that this was never legally rezoned. So let me know if you have any questions.
Well, this is a separate case from the mill property. right?
Yes.
In this particular instance, for whatever reason, it could be that we might allow development in a precarious situation potentially. Would you not agree?
Say more. Tell me more about what you're saying, what you're thinking.
Well, I mean, when I one word sticks out to me that a lot of the soil in there is sandy loam, which strikes me as being soil that could easily move more than, say, granite or something. Second thing, I'm still not very clear as I went out there today and sort of walked along the I'll call it a cliff above Johnson Creek, right? I wouldn't want to see houses get too close to that. So what we're wanting is to protect the natural area. And also when we do build, to have the buildings be safe so that they don't at some point slide down the hill. So that's what my concern would be.
I think that that's a valid concern. And Nikki, could you pull up the slide again that has the natural resource zoning? I just want to show you that probably every lot for home construction would be required to go through a geologic assessment review. So anytime a property has a higher, very high landslide or liquefaction susceptibility, or if it's on the ocean front, we do require a geologic assessment review. In that review, a geologist usually has to do some sort of boring or soil analysis or some way of determining the site suitability for construction. And oftentimes they'll make recommendations like excavating the site from whatever's there and putting in structural fill or putting in helical piles or whatever it takes to make sure that that particular house on that particular lot, that site is sort of suitable for that type of development. And they often put in erosion control measures and other sort of construction notes to make sure that we're not allowing construction of a home that's going to fall down a cliff. And I think Beach Loop Drive, you can see a lot of new development there in areas that could otherwise be precarious. And those foundations are very expensive because they're making sure that because they're the engineer's stamp that prepares that engineering report, right? That's on the line. So they're going to make sure that that's not happening, that that house is not falling down the cliff. I think it's a fair concern to have. There are a lot of areas in town, though, that have higher, very high landslide susceptibility where we still allow development. Did that answer your question?
I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Dana, on this map you have up right now, that dashed line, is that the line between, is that showing the line for natural resources?
I believe that's the bluff line. Are you talking about, it's like a
That
gray
dashed
line
line that's behind the houses.
I believe that's the bluff line, but the applicant's representative is here and I'll let him answer that question for you.
Okay.
Dan, I have a couple questions, please. The applicant's notes indicate there's an erosion control plan and a storm drain outfall. And that would have to be approved by our Public Works Department, correct?
That's correct. Our Public Works Department and our city engineer review all city facilities.
Okay, there was a comment made about a 15-foot drainage easement that's directed towards the Johnson Creek Greenway. And this may be a question for the applicant or the applicant's representative, but is this, if this is true, is this in effect a dumping of overflow stormwater into or down the slope or into Johnson Creek Greenway below? Do you know about that?
I'm gonna let the applicant's representative answer this more concretely, but I believe that that's an existing easement from prior subdivision plats. And yes, storm drainage does go down there, but I'll let him confirm or tell me
Okay.
I'm wrong.
Okay. And I think one of the things that came up on our site visit, I think a comment was made for the city or for this particular area of the city, that when the stormwater runoff is calculated and systems are put in place to handle that. Is that based, did I hear, on a 30-year flood cycle, so to speak?
I get it wrong every time, so Nikki will have to tell me. 20-year.
20-year, okay. And that, so basically the homes that are there now that tie into the sewer system, those are in compliance because perhaps the rain we had last season was greatly in excess of a 20-year cycle. Is that, would you agree with that?
That's correct. Yeah, we were told by our engineers, well, they haven't actually calculated the year flood. He said it was somewhere between a 30 and 40-year storm event, that real big.
Okay.
We did see a lot of flooding around town.
Okay.
Yeah, most of our systems are only built to that 20-year number.
Okay, super, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments from the commissioners? All right, we will move to public comment. This hearing is to be orderly and courteous. When it becomes your time to testify, please state your name and address or for the record. You will be given 5 minutes to share your comments. Please be mindful of your time. What happened to the applicant?
Sorry, you should let Russ talk.
Okay.
You can call him up. He can be the first.
We will give 20 minutes to the applicant and public comment will be given to 5 minutes to share your comments. Please be mindful of your time. Let me know if there's anybody that's signed up for public comment.
Hello, my name is Russ Dodge. It doesn't move. Coos Bay, Oregon. So I am Walter's representative. We've been working on this project for quite a few years. Kind of going through things. I mean, Dana's laid out everything pretty much so I don't really know additionally what I could say. So without all the documentation that the city has been unable to come up with, and in my files, I find nothing either. We feel like Walter was not notified, in the proper process. So that whenever this happened in 95 through 2008 or whatever, what?
Raise your speaker.
Oh. Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So we would just like to point that out kind of. If we would have gotten the notice at that time, we could have prepared something to present, opposition to the NR line bisecting across the property like it did. In my first submittal, we kind of speculated that Walter's father had been receiving the tax statements and everything. But now that we've done the research along with Dana, we probably realized that they never went out. And so we would like to, ask the city to back up and to place the NR line down to its original location, which is along the southerly boundary line. Now, Walter would not be in opposition to place the NR line along the top of bluff, though, to better protect the cliff or whatever you want to call that. It is steep. It is. So primarily, I guess I would just be here to answer questions. See what your main concern is with not removing the line, revising the line location. And I can answer the questions that the other guys had too. If they could restate them.
I think one was the gray dash line in this image.
Yeah, that
What?
is the top of block.
That's top of bluff. Okay, and then the other one was about the storm drainage easement.
Along the westerly boundary. Yes, we constructed that in 2005 or 6 during phase 2 development. And it's a large pipe. It's manholes that redirect, but it does go to Johnson Creek. And then flows off-site, of course, to the ocean.
Are there any, Mr. Dodge, are there any mitigating, I'll call it mitigating, is there any sort of a filtration system for the storm drainage?
No,
So you're basically taking water off of the streets or hardscape, so to speak, and it's going directly down into Johnson Creek?
yes,
Okay. And is that currently the way it drains now for the existing homes?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, one other thing. I think, well, at least all the comments that I've read in your application, in your letter, everyone seems to agree that the slope is steeper in some parts more than others. And I believe in one of your letters, you indicated about a self-imposed condition on future home sites requiring all improvements to be located a distance of 50 feet northerly of the top of bluff line. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, I don't know if it was ever done though, because this phase has not been constructed yet.
So I'm sorry, so the comment was not in reference to this phase or was in reference to other phases?
Well, it was a comment made during phase 1
Ah,
or phase 2, I guess.
okay.
The buildings would be set back from the top of the bank.
Okay, thank you.
And if I might just also hop in and say, because I didn't say this earlier, but the subdivision plat has already been approved. So the way that the lots are platted that's not in question as part of this public hearing.
The question is, if I look at the zoning history, the map that's up currently being shared, the bluff line is that dotted line, and some of these structures indicated or proposed basically come right up to the bluff line. Is that correct?
Now, what was that once again?
Oh, the map that's being shared now, it's with the dotted gray line that's indicated as the current bluff top. It looks like some of the proposed or the indicated structures are abutting right on that bluff. Is that correct?
Yes, but that was because that's my error. I prepared the map a little too quickly.
Okay, understand.
They will move northerly in all situations.
Right, okay, thank you.
What was that last comment he made? They wouldn't go what in all
They
situations?
would be moved north from what I've shown. That we
Okay.
just threw those on quickly just to kind of give an idea of where the footprint would be.
Yeah, if I can clarify, I asked Russ to put this together to just show the building footprint, because that is a requirement of our code that you show that a house could, in theory, be constructed on the lot that you're platting. So they're not actually going to be there. That's just an example of where they could be.
But are they drawn on there to provide for the minimum amount of front footage that they have to have, or
In
no?
the street right away, the setback?
Yeah, the setback.
No, they're just kind of thrown on there in all honesty.
The setbacks are shown though in
Yeah.
lighter.
Like.
It's quite a bit north. We can move all those north very comfortably.
Okay.
They just show that a house of any size, a certain size could be constructed within the buildable area of the lot, but we don't have a minimum house size either. So,
Right. No, yeah, setback was the
yes.
word that was escaping me.
And what's the setback in this zone or this area, Dana? What would the setback be from the edge of the property?
8 and 5.
Yeah, the setback from
side yard.
the front is 20 and then the rear is 10. Sides are, have to equal 13 with none less than 5.
So basically we're saying currently, well, if basically we're saying if this was all zoned R1, you could build your house up to 10 feet from the bluff top. Is that correct?
I mean, technically you could build your house at wherever the back of the property is. Now you probably aren't going to do that because that's not realistic, but the setback is from the property line, not from
Well, the property line ran to the bluff line, which in this case, I believe it does, doesn't it? No, it actually runs beyond the bluff line.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So really the property on the map, the property extends all the way down the slope, it looks like.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
So I guess that's it, unless you have some questions. I would kind of like to get your guys' preliminary idea on shifting that line, how you feel about it. We kind of view it as a housekeeping thing because it shouldn't have been there. There was no reason for the city to simply draw that bisecting line there across the property. I don't see any logic in it.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So, can you remind me when this magic line appeared?
2003
to 6 to 8.
Yes, somewhere in there. The ordinance 1559 was the time that I found it. I didn't dig through other files. This was one that popped out. But so in 1994, the line follows the property line, and then in 2006, it shifts upward or northward, sorry.
And
But there's no collaborating evidence for that shift.
That's
correct.
correct,
And
that I could find.
the golf course property that was traded to the city for some other piece of property, when did that happen?
The golf course was acquired by the city, I believe, in 2018.
Okay,
I believe the city purchased it though, from the prior property owner.
I thought you had said there was a trade, but okay.
Oh, there was a swap of natural resource for controlled development 1 land in that ordinance 1559. They were taking some land that, my understanding, that was down on the sort of base of Johnson Creek that was zoned CD1, and then flipping it for land that was upland that was zoned natural resources. So they just kind of switched
And
them
that
around.
was on the south side of the natural resources zone.
That's right.
Right.
So I'm looking in the packet and I think it's some of the maps that the applicant submitted that shows the development, looks like a plat. I think it was the map after what's
Mm,
the final plat, Ocean Terrace subdivision phase 3
okay.
that
Let's-
they submitted.
Let me see if I can pull it out and
Okay.
figure out which one. Is it one that platted this phase 4 but differently with cul-de-sacs by any chance?
It's more of a higher view. It has like,
Oh, where it's highlighted yellow?
well, I put it in black and white, so I don't know. I'm sorry.
Oh, is it the one that says final plat and then phase 3?
Yes, it's the
Brings
one
up-
that one.
Okay, I'm gonna give that to the applicant's representative.
Okay. And then what was the question?
Well, I mean, well, I'll see if I can just show it on my camera. It's this map right here. Let's see.
A little blurry.
Blurry.
I think you might have your background blurred, so it's.
Oh, that's why. Let me undo
Oh,
that.
okay. I
And
think
maybe,
I do.
hold on. Maybe you'll be able to see it if I unblur. Well, here. Okay, this map.
Yeah, I think that's this one. Yeah, okay, I think we're looking at the same map.
Okay, so it has the development right here,
Mhm.
right
Mhm.
here.
Yes,
Now, did they submit this map?
yes, I believe that was part of,
Yeah, I just reduced it and took the city zoning map and what we had built at that time, the perimeter of all the two.
Because, I mean, because that
Maybe.
shows the natural resource zone. So I guess my question is, it looks like when they were submitting plats, and I don't know when this was submitted. Was this submitted at the time they were proposing?
It's just a work copy map.
But it does
It's not
show the
official
natural
submittal.
resource zone.
Lot 64 is zoned NR. I think that's what you're
Well,
seeing.
no, this is showing, all of this is NR on this map that I assume you submitted.
Properties?
This was part of your packet, I think.
yeah, it's so hard to see.
Oh, I guess I misunderstood.
Sure.
That's just a surrounding property.
Yeah, but is this not, is, um. Well, so did you ever include, I guess this is my question, when you were submitting plats for this property, did you ever include the natural resource zoning on it?
When it pertained to lot 64, yes.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
well,
I think the question, Jan, I'm gonna hop in and try to
okay.
understand what you're saying. So you're asking if when they submitted documents in their subdivision approval, did they acknowledge that that area was natural resources on
Exactly.
subject lot? And I think the answer is yes, because prior to, I'm just gonna answer that for you, but I think the answer is yes, because prior to really digging into the files, we had no
Mhm.
reason to believe that the city's zoning map was inaccurate.
Right, so they developed this and they sold these lots to people with that recognized on their plats, right? Because they developed all this. I mean, this is like the third phase we're talking about, right?
This one is actually phase 4. So
Okay.
the subject parcel is phase 4 of this subdivision.
But
And
I'm sorry, is it the same developer that's developed all this?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my point is, you obviously recognized it at some point, and then you started selling these lots to people to build on. But now you're wanting to come back, now that you're wanting to do this phase, and you're wanting to change the zoning. I guess
We
that
were aware of the bisecting line after we did phase 3. 1, 2, and 3. At that time of recordation, the bisecting line was not where we see it now. It was along the southerly boundary line or the north line of the golf course.
okay, I see what you're saying. All right, thank you.
All right, it's this one that you're
Yes.
talking about.
Well, I don't know. That's a working map too, where we just showed the conversion part.
It's conversion parcel phase 4,
Mm-hmm.
and you're showing a dotted line of the bluff with your property line to the south, the main property line to the south.
Right.
And it goes through lot 64, where it's just shown as natural resources.
Yes. And whoever did the map or put the bisecting line, they were going for the southwest corner of lot 64 because they knew that was zone NR, so they were aligning that, so to speak.
And if I may also hop in here and say, the line is different on this conversion parcel phase 4 than it appears on the zoning map. So as I mentioned in my presentation, that line appears to have moved further and further north. But I want to also clarify that I think the location of the line is usually laid out in an ordinance as a description of the land. And without a description of what that land is, it would be really hard to identify where the line should be. Does that make sense? Like it would be like a legal description of the property.
So in changing this line back to the south boundary line, I don't think the city is really losing any property in our zone property. It should have never, been there in the first place.
But it has come up as a question.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, I didn't.
we understand your position is it shouldn't have been that way to begin with. We do have this discrepancy, which we're concerned about,
Sure.
right? Because homes get developed and you're trying to maximize the size of the home, maximize the use of the lot, and you get real close to.
Yeah, we should have had this discussion in 2003, 4, 5, somewhere in there.
Or at least before the phase 4 got approved. So so now we're feeling it's a difficult situation. We're feeling stuck. And I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, if we ought to just move on to public comment, because I don't know, we're sort of wasting this gentleman's time at the
Oh,
moment.
that's okay.
He needs to get something to respond to.
All right.
It's close anyway.
Are you,
Okay.
all right.
I'm a Zoom listener. The map that I see is called Zoning History Approved Subdivision Plat 2025. Is this really correct?
Who is this?
Yes. But we're about to start public comment. So if you want to speak, you should message the city in the chat and they'll put you on a list to be able to make a public comment.
All right. For public comment, the hearing is orderly and courteous. When it becomes your turn to testify, please state your name and address for the record. You will be given 5 minutes to share your comments. Please be mindful of your time. We are also watching. First public comment.
We'll do the in-person first. Christopher Snell.
My name's Snell. I'm a resident of Ocean Terrace. I live overlooking the.
I don't think his microphone's on.
Apologies. My name is Christopher Snell. I'm a resident of Ocean Terrace. I live overlooking the property in question. Developers have presented two arguments for this zone change. One of them is basically economical, that because of the small size reduction with the natural zoning area, they wouldn't be able to get as many houses on. They've actually presented two proposals for the development of this lot. The first was for 10 homes, and that's the one you see in this particular application. The proposal that was approved is actually for 15 homes. The economic argument is exactly the same in both of those documents. It's not changed. Their main argument is that it's in the wrong place. It was unintentional. I'm not sure that that's accurate. We see there's been some deliberation over where that zoning line is. There were some inaccuracies in the planning department's presentation, which I'll address in an email later. But as I only have 5 minutes, I'll carry on now. They appear to be claiming that the line was moved and appeared prior to them putting in the phase 3. If you look at the city's comprehensive plan, the outline for the lots for phase 3 are included with the natural resource line in its current position. There are plans available prior to that platting for three that show it also in its current place. It appears that there are also plans that show it elsewhere. A careful examination of the builder's plot with the yellow lines on it, that looks to have been superimposed over a heavy line for the natural resource line. The property was purchased in 1989. The 1990 Bandon Comprehensive Plan shows the area as a combination of controlled development and open space. The open space, if you look at it, clearly follows the watercourse of Johnson Creek. Over time, much of the land has been rezoned. Development was converted to residential, but the evidence is equivocal about when that zoning change occurred and how accurate the documents we have. One thing is for sure, the council recognized the significance of Johnson Creek. They've declared it a riparian zone and applied in accordance with Oregon administrative rules. They've got a riparian protection with a 100-foot protective buffer centered on the Johnson Creek. Oregon administrative rules also require that riparian corridors include all or portions of a significant wetland. The standard distance of the riparian corridor boundary should be measured from and include the upper edge of the wetland. The area surrounding the Johnson Creek is designated wetland. A second Oregon administrative rule indicates that where the predominant terrain consists of steep cliffs, riparian protection should also be extended to include the slope areas. That means you can't measure up the slope, but you have to measure horizontally until you get to the slope, and then you add distance to that. The entire bluff overlooking Johnson Creek, including the natural resource area, is designated a hazard zone. Special management areas review criteria recommends when an erosion or landslide hazard area exceeds the recommended width of a riparian buffer, the buffer width shall be extended to include the hazard area. Unintentional or not, the natural resource zone as currently configured appears in line with these rules. The builder's self-imposed restriction of 50 foot to the bluff line is in both of these proposals. The plat as drawn shows the home sites located on the bluff zone. We see that that was an error. However, when you look at the size of the plats, they don't fit anywhere else. Thank you.
Next.
Troxel 2922 Ruby Court. As we heard in the staff report, the city records are basically speculative and simply raise a lot of questions. Planning Commission still has an important decision in front of you tonight. It should not be viewed as an economic decision, but rather as an environmental decision. Johnson Creek Greenway is a 37-acre wet prairie habitat, which is one of the most endangered types on the Oregon coast. It is a natural wetland, its own watershed, and includes a fish-bearing creek and pond. It is one of the few remaining natural resource properties in Bandon. In summary, it is important. The NR boundary being discussed tonight is not a random line, but rather a demarcation line between residences and an NR ecosystem. I spent a lot of time in Johnson Creek Greenway. During the year, it supports over 40 species of songbirds, ducks, herons, and raptors, including nesting bald eagles. It supports a growing community of beavers, which helps sustain water in the pond, which this spring is full of minnows. Supporting this rezoning request and permit application would be irresponsible based on the comprehensive information you have been provided by Mr. Snell. I ask for your thoughtful consideration of the request before you and ask that you vote not to support them. Thank you.
Sir, may I ask you a question?
Sir.
Okay. So it's obvious that you don't agree with the rezone, right?
I don't agree that it should be changed.
Okay. So what do you want beyond that?
Well, I want a lot for Johnson Creek, but that's a whole different story.
Understand.
I want to protect that property
And how do we do that?
by not approving this request.
Anything else?
No,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Next.
Hi, I'm Julia Christopherson. I live in Ocean Terrace and I also own a second lot in Ocean Terrace, which many of my neighbors also own second lots in Ocean Terrace because we care about the livability of Ocean Terrace. I was astonished when I saw that this development has been approved as platted. It's very confusing, and I'm curious if there's a way to go back to the drawing board about this whole parcel of land and how it best be managed for the health of Johnson Creek, such a precious natural resource, for the livability of our community, and for the big picture aspect of Bandon being a livable community. Thank you.
I have a question.
Excuse me, I'm a Zoom listener.
So,
We're still on the zoning history map from like 20 minutes ago. Could somebody please update what you're displaying? Thank you.
Please.
Just end the presentation. Stop.
so here's my question. You've lived in that area for a number of years, it sounds like.
I moved in September of 2021 from Bend, Oregon, and I can talk a lot about development. I lived in Bend for 35 years and saw a lot of things happen. Good, really good for the community, and also developers who came with pockets that were filled generously, and they left with no contribution to the livability of the community. They weren't local.
Understand. Were you aware or your neighbors aware that the storm drain empties into Johnson Creek? That-
I was aware of that. I've also, like Wade, had a lot of activity with the city council about Johnson Creek. So yes.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, next.
William Ferrer, sorry if I mispronounced your name, William.
Hi, my name is William Ferrer. I am one of the volunteers who over the years has been working on supporting the wildlife through planting trees, flowers, bushes, and so forth. And I simply want to protect Johnson Creek Greenway. It's a tremendous asset to the city, and the houses moving up on it represented danger. I didn't hear anything from the developer about any kind of environmental or impact study on what could happen. So I feel like the staff is trying to provide the developer with the benefit of the doubt, and I think in this case, the benefit to the city outweighs the benefit of the doubt and the developer's economic interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bob Morrow. I live in Ocean Terrace. I was shocked in the last few moments to learn that the developer actually knew about this NR zone since Phase 3. My comments. 2 days ago, we celebrated Earth Day. Tonight, you have the opportunity to honor the spirit, not with a proclamation, but with a potentially meaningful policy action, by voting against the rezoning of parcel 201 from natural resource to residential. There are several reasons to oppose this change, and I want to begin with your own words, specifically the comprehensive plan, which calls for buffers between conflicting uses and open space to protect the bluff area. This rezoning proposal does not honor that goal. In fact, it undermines it. The staff report refers to the recently approved tentative subdivision plat for Ocean Terrace Phase 4. Many of us in the neighborhood would love to have clarification on that. Since it is tentative, what comes next? Will the community get the 10-house option we've all understood to be the plan and literally bought into, or the now 15-house version no one has asked for? This isn't a simple mapping issue or clerical fix. The staff report acknowledges the landslide susceptibility on the site and the need for detailed engineering. The steep banks, cliffs are vulnerable, and turning a blind eye to that in pursuit of just 5 more house lots seems irresponsible. If anything, the existing natural resource zoning is the prudent designation. It's been suggested that an error in mapping from the 1990s somehow justifies the change, but an unverified anonymous mapping error isn't proof. And even if it were, the solution is not to double down on past oversights. The comprehensive plan maps still haven't been updated to reflect these so-called changes. And in the meantime, open space has quietly become private property, with residential and commercial development already underway. I recently watched a documentary called The Greatest Good. It's a history of the U.S. Forest Service. And one quote from the Forest Service founder, Gifford Pinchot, stuck with me, and I believe it belongs in the conversation this evening. Quote, "All land is to be devoted to its most productive use in the permanent good of the whole people, and not for the temporary benefit of individuals or companies or cities. The question will always be decided by the standpoint of the greatest good, of the greatest number in the long run." So I ask you, 120 years after Ms. Pinchot wrote that, what is your definition of the long run? Is it 5 years? 50? What is the greatest number? Is it one individual who profits from rezoning? Or is it the broader abandoned community that Julia was just talking about, now and into the decades to come? Imagine a future 100 years from now when families walk along Johnson Creek, perhaps with wild salmon returning to spawn, and they look to the north. Will there be a path back to Ocean Terrace? Will they see densely packed tract houses crowding the slope, or buffering hillside of native plants, with homes safely located, with big yards and perhaps a swing set and an apple tree for the family? What is the greatest good you can do tonight? This rezoning would encourage a few more houses at the expense of habitat, hillside stability, and the spirit of a beach community that values space, beauty, safety, and Johnson Creek. This is more than just a reset. It is a fork in the road for you. Your zoning decision tonight will echo far beyond the margins of parcel 201. In the short
30
term,
seconds, wrap it up.
a no vote will help protect the character and property values of Ocean Terrace. In the long term, it may be one of the choices that defines how Bandon grows and what it chooses to preserve. Please vote no on file 25012. Thank you for your time.
Next.
Hello, my name's Andrea Berg. I live at 366 Natalie Way, right on the edge of the Ocean Terrace. So I'm probably in a home that was one of the early homes built in that area. And when we purchased our home in 2019, the realtor swept her arm across the neighborhood and said, "And all of that is riparian zone. That will not be built on." And within a year, there were at least 10 houses built right before our eyes. And so, we are busy living. We did not have time to wonder, how could the city of Bandon allow this to happen? But we did get involved with Johnson Creek, and we care about that riparian zone, and we care about the other than human life. And we want the city that we have moved into commissioners, to care too, and to listen to my friends Julia and Wade and Bob and William, and take their words in and use them as part of your planning. Please do not approve this rezoning. I speak for myself, my husband, and several of my neighbors who are not here this evening. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Next.
Well, there isn't a whole lot left to say after the beautiful presentations that have been given to you by people who really know the area and have a financial interest in protecting what they have created and what they've worked to preserve. However, I would like to say that I was on the city council when we voted to purchase the natural area that was known as Old Bandon Links. And my reason for supporting that purchase was to provide a safe, protected area for the wave that we have been promised for a very long time. In New Orleans, one of the reasons why Hurricane Katrina was so damaging was because they overbuilt everything and they covered all their areas where water could have been absorbed with concrete and impervious surfaces. So consequently, the damage was exponential. That is my big reason for having supported the purchase of that natural area, was to protect an area that could absorb water. And if you are familiar with that area, you know that Johnson Creek flows out to sea underneath Beach Loop. And if you think about the reverse process, which would happen if we had a big wave, and we do have a very large subduction area not far out that we are promised will deliver one of these days. And the path of least resistance all along the coast are the rivers and the creek beds. So what's going to happen is we get a big, huge amount of water, and that's going to go right up Johnson Creek. Now, can you predict how deep that water is going to be? No, you can't. But you can be pretty sure by virtue of the studies from the Oregon Department. It's called DOGAMI. I can never remember what it all stands for, but it's the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Interests or some darn thing. But anyway, they're relatively certain we are going to have an event here again in the future. So we have a responsibility to protect our areas and not to cover everything with impervious surfaces, and to be absolutely prudent about wetland spaces. And to ignore the admonitions of the experts is very short-sighted. This whole proposition needs to be studied. The borderlines need to be reestablished with the advice of geotechnical people, and this is just totally inappropriate at this point. Thank you.
So Claudia, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So you know what our circumstances are here. So we have a three-phase subdivision that's being built out. We've got a fourth phase that's just been approved by the city. And we have this whole question about the line in the plot map about R1 versus natural resource, et cetera. So What's your solution?
Well, I look at it this way. I think we should err on the side of caution. We cannot continue to cover every bit of space with development and think that that's not going to make a difference, because it will. And you can talk to the people in California now who are dealing with all kinds of problems down there. You can talk to the people in other states that have experienced weather phenomenon that is totally unlike anything they've experienced before, fires and floods. We have to err on the side of caution. And if the city has made a mistake, you can recommend to the city that they need to go back and rethink what they've done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
So from Zoom, Darcy Grayheck.
Darcy, it looks like you're muted. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. My name is Darcy Grayheck. I was born a water protector. My mother is Lakota. She was born at Standing Rock Reservation. I've lived in Bandon for 35 years. I've watched development. I feel that the water is what is at risk here, the creek itself. Not that it hasn't been compromised already, but this would just add insult to injury. On October 7th, 2024, the City Council voted to give the Johnson Creek Drainage Basin between Highway 101 and Beach Loop Drive the zoning of natural resources with the boundary as it was described. Now, it's pretty inconvenient that this Planning Commission has decided that they don't know why that boundary was there, and maybe a little more digging should be done before we completely give up on how it did get there. As Claudine said, maybe there's some geotechnical advice or a hydrologist who could make some sense of this, and it shouldn't be lay people making these decisions. For several years, myself and many other people have invested time and energy into preserving this area as a greenway. A greenway is a natural resource area that can have walking trails, although no real development. As this site is mostly what scientists call a wet prairie, a type of wetland, it is not available for development in any traditional sense. Please do not set a precedent by moving the NR boundary line. It sits where it is for the reason that it is a marine terrace bluff. Marine terrace bluff implies that there's perched water. It's not like the cliffs along Beach Loop that are basalt and that are hard to move. This is soft, and water moves through it all the time and seeps out from the bluffs on both sides of the creek. Let's consider the services this creek basin already provides our citizens. It is a natural waterway which the city of Bandon uses for channeling stormwater away from developed areas. Johnson Creek as a natural area contains plants that help clean the neighborhood pollution from much of that stormwater before it reaches the ocean. The bluffs along each side of this floodplain seep water. This bluff with houses on it, proposed houses on it, will seep water year-round from their perched reservoirs. This generous habitat contains a variety of wetlands, yet except for our rainiest seasons, it allows people to walk for exercise and for wildlife viewing. Were there a tsunami, as Claudine also pointed out, the area would absorb a great deal of onshore flow. Going back to the first service for which the city uses the creek, stormwater removal, stormwater has changed with the advent of atmospheric rivers. Multiple outlets along the length of the creek gather enormous amounts of precipitation, slowing it and ideally cleaning it. The force of the water entering off of Highway 101 was so great that several years ago, Oregon Department of Transportation used large boulders as riprap to prevent erosion of the bank where it enters the creek off of the highway. Throughout the basin, the creek has cut deeply down through the earth, creating a channel 7 or 8 feet deep in many places. Not a healthy situation for slowing or cleaning water before it enters the ocean. The bluffs, including the one on which Ocean Terrace housing development is being built, continually seep water down to the toe of the bluff. As the water enters Johnson Creek, it will add to the erosion, as well as leach any household or landscape fertilizers or chemicals into the creek. Adding even more houses and a road to the edge of this situation will only increase the impact of both erosion, as stormwater is channeled away from the housing, and pollution, as water carries residue from homeowner activities. Non-point source pollution into the ocean is the result of mismanagement. I think we need to really look at this resource line.
30 seconds, wrap it up.
And I implore that you please protect our natural resource boundary line and deny further development of the bluff holding up that Ocean Terrace development. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy.
Beverly Seltzer.
Hello, I'm at 834 Spyglass Drive. And I've been there several years. My husband and I bought in there. We were told there was no existing Plat 4. And as owner builders, in conjunction with the crew we had hired, we both have familiarity with that. I also worked for an outfit called Alt Geoscience back in the mid-'80s, so I'm familiar with boring logs and all of what's been mentioned as far as the structure of and the stability of the zone we're talking about. I also was completely unaware of the 15 houses being approved, which basically, when we bought our home, looking at the size of the property, we had to go through the city and apply the size of there was minimum sizes for the homes. And I would assume that since this gentleman who started all of this applied the CCRs, he would be also applicable to dealing with or being in, having to deal with his own, what he wrote. If it's good for everybody else, it should be good enough for him. So the minimum size houses that have to be on these, and then the variances that we had to deal with in putting our house together to put it on this piece of property. I just don't see how that's going to happen. And when you look at what they've projected for 15 homes across there, when I'd seen 10 to begin with, and it's basically a picket fence that nobody gets to see through. And we built one of the more custom homes in the entire area. And to see this go in is it's just appalling. I think it's an egregious error. And I'd like it all looked into.
Thank you.
Next.
Cami Boons.
Hi, my name's Cami Bunis. I live at 3080 Natalie Way, about a quarter mile from the subject property. And I'm here speaking against the proposed rezone of land in the Ocean Terrace subdivision. The proponent of the zone change alleges this natural resource zoning was an arbitrary mapping error. I walked the area, zoned NR, and I don't believe the designation was in error. This location is where Johnson Creek actually butts right up to the bottom of the bluff, unlike downstream where the creek moves away from the bluff. It's been pointed out by others that the line as it currently exists actually creates a more or less even distance between Johnson Creek and the northerly extent of the natural resource zone along the entirety of the subject property. Given the area in question is the only area along the property where the creek abuts the toe of the slope, it makes perfect sense the line would be drawn here. The natural resource zoning here complies with Oregon Administrative Rule 350-081-0600 related to erosion and landslide buffers. Protection of natural resources is consistent with Oregon Goal 5 related to wetlands and the city's comp plan policy to protect water quality and natural areas. That policy also requires review of any development proposal that could impact a wetland with appropriate state and federal agencies. I didn't see any mention of such review in the staff memo. Rezoning the land would not comply with Housing Goal 10, as it would not ensure aesthetic and protection of the natural environment. City land neighbors the subject property. Johnson Creek Natural Area is the only city park that I'm aware of south of Seabird. The Greenway has an active friends group who've been planting native species and looking for ways to support the city regarding maintenance and enhancements. Johnson Creek Natural Area has the potential for walking trails, bird watching, and environmental education, not to mention the more general benefits of stormwater runoff and scenic open space. While it's unfortunate there are not better records regarding the process of placing this land into natural resource status, the fact remains it's been in this zone for more than 19 years. I want to, sorry, I'm a little disjointed. I'm learning new information here tonight. On page 9 of the staff report, it says the Bandon Comp Plan identifies open space as designating, among other purposes, areas to serve as buffers or transitions between conflicting uses, and to recognize areas for which, for reasons such as slope limitations, should best remain open. And even though there's some question about when this went into natural resource zoning, I think the developer and the city both agreed that prior to that, the zoning included residential and open space. Land adjoining streams and areas with soil or slope conditions not suitable for building are appropriate for open space classification. What I learned tonight is if you take away the natural resource designation, somebody can build a split level house right on past the toe of the slope, and you can have people maximizing views and degrading the slope without a care. And then also, I think there's an error on page 9 of the staff report. This is regarding
30 seconds, wrap it up.
I think there's an error. And so the thought is that changing this zone, it basically will not adversely impact the developers. And I think the staff report stated it the opposite. The developers are still going to be able to satisfy land use, utility service needs, and capacity.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Donna Campbell?
Yeah, hi. Well, I've been a supporter of the Johnson Creek Greenway, and I really feel that that natural resource area is extremely important because it benefits the environment for both wildlife and humans. And I really don't have anything to add to the people that have been speaking because they've been obviously done a lot of research and thought things out very thoroughly. And I have to agree with what they've been saying. I just feel it's very important to protect the creek and the surrounding area. It's really critical. And I'd like to see that natural resource zone kept there in order to protect the integrity of that area. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you.
Next.
Susan Swafford?
Hello, I'm Susan Swafford at 731 Seacrest Drive. And we're fairly new to Bandon, and so much has already been articulated properly, but I wanted to also insert, I heard comments made like geological studies, and if they needed to bring more ground, scrape the ground, bring more fill in. I did attend one of your meetings and did leave pictures there showing you how a potential build that is considered safe for that particular house impacts all the other homes where their hard-earned money has gone into. And I bring to note on Lincoln in the 3000 block, I left you those pictures where they had to bring in a lot of extra soil because of the wetland and have basically diminished the house value of all those houses around. Nobody's going to want to be able to resell and have anyone, you yourself would not want to live in a house where there's a gigantic looming house over you. And that needs to also be considered because all the points are correct. It's a wetland, it should be preserved, it's beautiful. So you push back further north. Now you've got houses right up against Seacrest. And when they do the geological studies and find out that the water doesn't drain right, the soil's not right, they're going to start digging, they're going to start piling in dirt. And now you have these monstrosity houses that will diminish all of our houses. So what kind of consideration does the council take in retaining the value of our houses around us? We're mostly retired people. These are our life savings. We moved to Bandon to enjoy the beauty of Bandon, but not live in a San Jose, which is basically what I see starting to happen. In every little crevice or cranny, a house is being placed, yet no consideration has to the aesthetics of the other houses around it. So I know the next question from the council will be, what's your solution? My solution is, I know we have to have a compromise, right? So we want to preserve Johnson Creek. If something has got to happen, then it needs to be dialed back. It needs to be dialed back with limitations on exactly what kind of structure, what kind of landfill, what kind of drainage. We already have dug a man-made trench in the back of our fence just to keep our yard from flooding. It's already a serious problem on Seacrest with all the homes. And I will also add that all of us on Seacrest were also told that phase 4 was not going to happen because it was decided that it was wetlands and not buildable, which is why the street ended. And honestly, it was the only reason why we bought on Seacrest, was because that was what we were looking for, was a view. So if you say, what's the solution? My first solution would be to scratch the whole project. If you said that can't happen, then you need to dial it back to the original plans and take in account the whole neighborhood. I mean, sorry for the person who can't sell 15 houses and has to be satisfied with 8. But that is for the good of Bandon, for Bandon citizens, and for maintaining the value of all the homes in the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. No one else? Okay. All right, we will have 10 minutes of follow-up testimony by the applicant, if he so desires.
So a couple of things. First, the thing that I think I misspoke when I said that we were aware of the zone line, the bisecting line during phase 3. We were not. So that was a misstatement of mine on my part. So it's a lot to take in. I would like to say that Johnson Creek will not be touched. Johnson Creek will be protected. I mean, we would. What? Well, no, it will be. We have substantial erosion control features that go in on the subdivision that will be along the top of the bank, controlling any movement over the hill. It's a requirement. We would not do anything but that. So Johnson Creek is a valuable asset, you know, for everybody. Walter is aware of that. We're not trying to destroy the waterway. We're not trying to do anything different. The bluff will remain untouched, the entire bluff. Walter has hired Liza to go in and do some stabilization vegetation at the top. She's been on the site for probably 5 years now, doing the gorse abatement. And I think there is a little bit of misconception, not misconception, but I don't think we're talking about the same line in some of the people's call-ins. They were describing the line to be down from where we're talking about. I'm not sure what that's going on. And then I had a question. Is it Mr. Snell? Yeah. One of your first, you had a couple of maps.
Yep.
That displayed, refresh my memory.
Okay, so there are two key maps. One,
Right.
the Bandon Comprehensive Plan, which shows the NR zone with phase 3 in place. So
Was that my map?
It's the Bandon Comprehensive Zone map that's on the council website that anybody who's looking to buy property in Bandon looks at and sees what's
Okay.
where.
Okay.
And so that shows the zone line where it currently is, and you can,
Going diagonal?
yes, you can see it directly relevant
Okay.
to phase 3. There's also a plan available, which was up there, and it's on, I've got it on one of my pages as well, that shows that line in the same position before phase 3 was. So there are.
All right, you're gonna have to approach the podium if you're gonna have a two-way conversation.
Okay. No two ways. Okay. I'll have to look into that a little bit. I don't know what to say about some of these things. It's some of it just goes with the property development, and we have the right to do certain things. You know, the 10 lot, 15 lot. We revised the tentative plan back in June, I think. We revised it to 15 lots.
You didn't change this application.
This application? Well.
Because the Zoom
Okay.
people can't hear you.
Well, don't mean to argue, just
No, I'm
trying to
not
go through things, just to kind of spin that. Okay,
So I have
Well-
a question. I have a question.
okay.
So originally, the idea was 10 homes for phase 4, right? And then in June, you made a decision to go 15 homes. Correct?
In June.
I think that's what you just said.
Okay.
And so as I was looking through all this material, there was a lot of material to go through. I thought I had read something somewhere that you or the owner or something made some comment about having phase 4 involve larger parcels,
We did. We've
5 parcels or something?
Well, at one time, we had 2 parcels. We've been going at this for quite a while, you know, so the economics, the local market has changed, you know, during that duration, trying to adjust to that. He was trying to search for the best use of that property, apartment complexes. That's when we had the 2 large parcels. You know, at one time, we had 26 lots here. Phase 4 was to be 26 lots. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Density changes, you know, we resubmitted, revised.
So 28 lots is out,
26 lots is out.
26 lots is out, 5 lots is out, 10 lots is out, and now we're at 15, right?
Well, that's what we have on the board that's been approved.
Yeah, the subdivision plat is not in question. The tentative subdivision plat has already been approved.
I understand. Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't know. No, nothing else.
All right,
Thank you.
all right. At this point, the hearing,
I may make a recommendation to you
all right,
that you close the public hearing and end public comment, but delay making a decision until your following meeting to allow our city attorney, who's not present here this evening, to opine on the situation, because no evidence was submitted into the record showing that this zone change or that the area was ever legally zoned natural resources. And I don't know much about land use law, but I do know there are things like preserved property rights that if a lot was never legally changed, we can't move forward with that. So that would be my recommendation to you this evening. Continue your hearing and allow for the city attorney to weigh in.
So we will not close the hearing. We will,
So you can close the hearing and then,
this hearing,
yeah, and then just continue your deliberation to the next meeting.
the deliberations to the next hearing. So we'll close the hearing at 8:55
And then
and continue until the next.
to May 22nd, 7
To allow
PM.
additional information to come forward.
Yeah, just the letter from the city attorney. So we don't want to submit any,
That's the only information.
yeah, and then you can make a decision at your May meeting and then we can still get it on the June city council agenda.
right.
Otherwise, we'd have to renotice.
All right, we'll do that.
Just to,
So I think you have to make a motion to do that.
I motion that we close the hearing and allow us to get information from the city attorney so that we can render our decision after we have the full information.
On May
On May
22nd at 7 PM in the city council chamber.
Okay, sorry.
A point of order, please. I think I'd just like to state before we close the hearing that I think everyone needs to understand that the applicant owns this land and, as Dana said, has certain rights to develop it. And I don't believe if it wasn't for the fact that the owner is requesting the rezoning, the 15 homes, as long as they conform to Bandon standards and code, could have been built or will be built. So the rezoning, while it perhaps enlarges the buildability size of the lot, doesn't stop any development. It just shrinks the development should the applicant move forward with developing. And tell me if I'm wrong, Dana, on that.
No, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, everyone loves Johnson Creek. I think that's very important. Personally, I'm shocked that the city allows storm outfall into the creek without any mitigation factors, but that's nothing for this hearing. But yeah, I think we just all need to remember, after all is said and done, that the applicant owns the land and has rights to develop it as long as he's in conformance with current Bandon standards. Thank you.
I will get you more information about the storm drain easement, but I believe it's like a grandfathered in thing. I don't know that you can do that anymore. So let me follow up just as a point of clarification on that.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, a motion and second to close the hearing. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Hearing is this
Continue.
hearing is ended and it will be continued.
Can we take a 5-minute recess?
That would be an excellent idea.
Okay. Vicky, can you put us on mute? 5 minutes. We'll be back at 9:02.
We will now deal with item 5.2 on the agenda, 25.009, adopting amendments to address House Bill 3395 changes related to duplex housing. I declare this public hearing open at 9:05 PM on April 24, 2025. This is an official public hearing before the Planning Commission of the City of Bandon for application 25-009, an amendment to the Bandon Municipal Code to address duplex housing requirements listed in House Bill 3395. Applicable criteria related to this action are listed in the staff report available online through the city's website and as part of tonight's meeting agenda. Please address your comments to these criteria or the criteria you believe apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford this decision-making body and the parties involved an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal based on that issue. Official notice is hereby given that the planning commission can consider laws, ordinances, court decisions, etc., without having them established as evidence in the hearing record. Copy of the minutes of this hearing, as well as the rules and procedures, will be available at the city offices. May we have a staff report?
Absolutely. So House Bill 3395 was adopted by the Oregon State Legislature in 2023. The bill made a series of amendments related to housing. The one that affects us is that they changed the population size for cities that must allow duplexes on each lot or parcel zoned for residential use that allows for the development of a single-family detached dwelling. Previously, this provision only applied to cities 10,000 or greater. It now applies to cities that are 2,500 and greater. We were fortunate, I don't think we would have caught this otherwise. We were fortunate to get some grant funding to be able to do a housing code audit. Our auditors caught in their review of our existing code that we are not in compliance with this particular state provision. Fortunately, we didn't miss the deadline because we just have to come into compliance by June 30th, 2025. Otherwise, we revert to state minimum standards, which I've heard we don't want to do. So the proposed amendment includes changing duplexes from conditional uses to outright permitted in the CD1, CD2, CD3, CDR1, and CDR2 zones. It also would reduce the duplex lot size that's currently listed in the code to match that of single-family dwelling, which is 5,400 square feet in R1, R2, CD1, CD2, CD3, CDR1, and CD2 zones. It would also update our design standards. Anything that doesn't have a dimension or a good description that makes that particular design standard clear and objective, we are required to change. That's been on our list for a while, so it's getting taken care of in this amendment. And then it also requires reducing off-street parking to 1 per unit. So 2 parking spaces are required for a single-family dwelling, and now 2 parking spaces will be required for a duplex. The auditors did have some questions for us that's listed in the attached document. I believe the main one was just sort of clarifying in our design standards when we talk about roof tiles, art tile or architectural grade shingles. They were asking, do you just care about roof shingles? What does that mean? We need to provide a little more detail. They've given the suggestion of slate tile, shakes, or wood shingles on the facade of the house, or synthetic materials, concrete, pressed wood products, metal, or other materials that are designed to and do appear to be slate tile, shake, wood shingles. I think that's fine. I wanted to know how you all felt about making that change and sort of allowing that the hardy board, if you will, as a recommended or maybe not recommended, but allowed style, and then also whether or not you want to regulate the type of roofing material. My understanding is that the origin of these design standards was from way back when cities were required to allow mobile and manufactured homes, and so the style of roof tile was important to ensure a cohesive design. I'm not sure that's a problem anymore, so I'll leave that up to you. So the attached code provisions show just the changes in the R1 zone, but I just want to be clear that in the final amendment, they'd be in all of those zones that I listed. Let me know if you have any questions.
You also had pillars and posts and exterior windows.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Is there a desire to regulate the placement of pillars and posts? If the purpose is to have a certain design from the front, should it be pillars and posts incorporated into the front of the home? Should they be of a certain size or a certain material? And then the other one was clear story windows. My understanding, I would never know if it weren't for this job, is that clear story windows are above another window. But certainly we've had other folks do sort of like long and thin windows that are just sort of higher up in a wall. And we've counted those as well. So if you wanted to clarify or provide any comment on those, we'd be grateful for it. I'll also note that the city is assembling a housing advisory committee, that it will be a public committee that will review anything apart from this. So there's still an opportunity to change this later. We just need to make things clear and objective for duplexes by June 30th, and we can continue to refine and amend at a later date.
Okay, the other question, another comment here is, do we have the same kind of stipulations for single dwelling houses?
So these,
The size, the exterior siding and the roofing and pillars and posts and celestial windows.
that's correct. So these design features are required for any new housing development in the zone. The issue before is that they weren't very clear and objective, and so the state law requires that we make them clear and objective.
I had questions on some of these.
Sure, go for it.
On the roof, number 8,
Mhm.
slate tile shakes or wood shingles or synthetic materials, e.g. concrete, pressed wood products, metal, or other material that are designed to and do appear to be slate, tile, shake, or wood shingles. So we have metal roofs. I know I have one that doesn't appear to look like slate, tile, shake, or wood shingles.
I think that their recommendation here was they got a little confused because they said, are these roof shingles or all shingles? So I think that their recommended change here only applies to wall shingles and not roof shingles. Because you're right that we do allow metal roofs in, I think, in all zones.
Okay, so that need to be clarified, that they're talking about.
Yeah, but I think when it says site or shingles, I think that's what she's asking, or what the auditor was asking, was do we want to regulate siding, or do we want to regulate roof shingles? Or both, or neither.
So, well, I guess I'm just asking, what's the intent of that number 8? Is it, so you're saying that's probably
Must be
just talking about siding?
That's correct. I think
Okay.
the recommended changes talking about siding, I think the Tyler architectural grade shingles, we've always referred to as roof shingles. So they were proposing getting rid of that and instead adding in the slate, tile, shakes, wood shingles, or synthetic materials.
Well,
for just
siding, the hardy board looks like siding, and to me, what they're talking about here, they're talking about shingles, not or materials that look like a shingle.
We can also just cross this one out if we feel like it's too confusing.
Or maybe we can work on it and come up with some better, because I thought what we have in there now was pretty
For
clear.
siding, this is for siding, we could say appropriate siding materials. And that's,
But I don't think that's clear and objective. I think what she's saying is it needs to be clear and objective, appropriate.
Yeah, they were saying specific or measurable are good terms or like ways to determine if something is clear and objective. So listing out.
Well, I would like to, I thought we had some pretty clear language for siding, but
I think it's still in here. So we do allow horizontal lap siding on 100% of the exterior, cedar shake or shingle siding on 100% of the exterior, or a combination of cedar shake or shingle siding with lap siding or lap siding with stone.
yeah, that seems pretty clear to me. I think we could just stick with that perhaps.
And then just cross this one out. And we can also add into that one that I just read, the language about the sort of materials that are designed to look and appear like those too.
Is hardy board an example of that?
Yeah, because we've gotten that question before, that if it's like a fake cedar shake that's hardy board, like does that count? And we've said yes, but I suppose it's probably good to put it in there
Yes.
explicitly.
And I think if you have that, it looks like lap siding, or my only issue was just that this seemed to have to look like shingles.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I think you're correct. I read it many times wondering what it was talking about. So I think
And the other one I had a question on is number 12, a minimum 25 square foot covered front porch that is at least 5 feet deep and elevated entirely a minimum of 18 inches. To me, I can see why why does it need to be elevated 18 inches? I would think some people that have mobility issues, that might be an issue.
I think where they're coming from with these is the desire to have interesting architecture. And so it's just a suggestion. What they pulled were things from other codes, but I think you make a good point that may then require a ramp or something else.
I
So-
mean, which I think looks even worse, maybe. I think I would suggest just leaving out the elevation requirement.
I have to agree, but especially with an aging population, using walkers or wheelchairs or something, I think would make it easier not to have an elevated one.
And then my final one is number 13, recessed entry that is at least 2 feet behind the furthest forward living space on the ground floor and a minimum of 8 feet wide. I don't know why we need to have furthest forward living space, because a lot of these that I see, they're recessed from the garage, which is not a living space. Like you'll have a garage and then you'll have a recessed area behind. Well, for example, I go back to my house is the same. The recessed is from the recession is from the garage, not from a living space. And I see it on a lot of houses on Beach Loop as well, and probably a lot of other houses.
I think that one may be, so we've had this question before from folks about if you have an offset in the building face or roof of at least 12 inches, which would be if your garage is offset from like the front facade of your house, that's different than the actual entry area being recessed. And so I think what that's getting at is, because we have run into this before being not very clear and objective, is can you have a recessed entry area and an offset in your building face? Can those be the same thing? And I think what this is clarifying is they cannot. It's specifically the actual door to your house is recessed into the home. And I guess I should clarify on the design features too, we have a list of 18, but you only need to utilize 6 of them in this zone and 8 in another, so you don't have to choose all of them.
Well, but just, so you're saying just having, so included in the list is not just recessing your entry from the garage.
Yeah, you could also just have an offset in the building face. So if your garage was set up,
And where is that on one of the choices that would be one of the 6?
Number 10.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, your garage could be set forward
Okay.
or back from the front
I
facade
got
of the house.
Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We can select just 6 of these.
Well, no. So like when you go to build a house, you
Oh.
have to,
All
as
right,
the
all right.
person
Yeah.
constructing your home, you get to choose 6 of these to integrate into the,
To make them more interesting.
yes, to make them more interesting.
And thank heavens we don't have to pick.
Yeah.
Okay. We will go to public hearing, public comment. This hearing is to be orderly and courteous. When it becomes your turn to testify, please state your name and address for the record. You will be given 5 minutes to share your comments. Please be mindful of your time. Nikki, do we have anybody that requires public comment?
On that topic not covered tonight, you weren't there.
Say again?
That's for this topic.
For the code, okay.
This is for including duplexes. All right. So we have no.
I don't have anyone else signed
All
up.
right.
Dawn.
Any commissioners to wish to? No, we can't do that either because we don't have anybody to question. All right, any additional comments? We've heard all those, I believe. So we can continue the hearing to a date and time certain, or can close it. I will entertain a motion to close this hearing.
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. All right, we'll go into the commission deliberation. Any deliberations?
Well, I would just like to. I guess
need-
I would like to see something different language for number 8. So I'm thinking I might, if we could continue this to the next and maybe get some different language for number 8.
We're under a time constraint, so we might have to do this tonight.
Oh, okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Would you like, so do you want language for number 8 about roof shingles or siding?
The siding, I liked what you read about the siding.
Because I think then what you can do is delete number 8 and change 18 to have all of those options, the horizontal lap siding, cedar shake, etc. And then you can say also materials that are designed and do appear to be of that. I mean, we can make that sound better, but meant to look like horizontal lap siding, cedar shake, or stone.
In other words, that e.g. concrete, pressed wood products, well, I don't know about metal.
Yeah, designed to resemble. There we go. I have a wordsmith here. So you could say that, and then so the 18 would be the same, and then or slate, tile, shakes, wood shingles, etc., or materials designed to resemble those. I think you can just move 8 down to 18 and combine the two.
Okay, that sounds good. And then eliminating the elevation in number 12.
Yes.
And I would be good with that.
Okay. So I just want to clarify that if you did make a motion, you would move to recommend this to the city council with the following changes: deleting number 8 and moving the materials list to number 18, and then eliminating the elevated entirely a minimum of 18 inches from number 12.
Yes.
So someone can probably say so moved.
I was gonna say.
Well, we need to also consider pillars and posts, celestial windows.
I mean, yeah, you can if you want to make it more specific. I think what they're asking is, do you want them to be specifically on the front of the home or of a certain size or shape or material? Or would you just allow any types of pillars and posts?
Well, if you're gonna have a, where is it?
Covered porch?
Covered porch, then you'd probably want to combine pillars and posts in the covered porch portion.
Yeah, I think there's, an option. Some people have done pillars and posts. I'm trying to think, if they don't have a covered porch that's 25 square feet, they can still get credit for the pillars and posts. So we try to have as many options as possible.
And I know I have a celestial window over my living room windows, so, but it came with the house, so
Mhm.
I don't know that we need to clarify that one.
Okay.
So make that part of the motion as well. As amended.
I'm
Ooh,
sorry.
It's
what-
not moving that, right?
all right. All in favor?
Well, hold on, what, I didn't
Huh?
understand that last amendment.
Yeah, were you saying that you wanted to leave, I thought you wanted to leave clear story windows as they are and pillars and posts as well. So is
Well,
there an amendment that you're
You could,
recommending?
you could put pillars and posts under the over covered porches.
Yeah, we generally try to give people as many options as possible. So if you allow people to have pillars and posts separately from the covered porch,
Ah.
then if their covered porch isn't, well, no, yeah, I mean, if their covered porch isn't 25 square feet, then they can still get credit for pillars and posts because it's still a design feature. If you leave them separate.
All right. Leave them all separate then.
And we need to go back.
What?
We need to make a different motion.
Oh, well, I think the motion would remain that you would recommend to the city council approval as written, but delete number 8 and move the materials list to 18 and then eliminate the elevation component of number 12.
All right. So that's the motion. And all in favor?
I think Sally,
I did.
she moved.
So moved.
Did somebody second?
I'll second.
Tom. Okay.
Motion is second. All in-
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I can do a roll call vote.
Oh, all right.
Commissioner
Yes.
Orsi, Vice Chair Jerkowski.
Aye.
Chair Starbuck. Commissioner,
Yes.
Commissioner Norman,
Yes.
Commissioner Frey,
Yes.
Commissioner Pressler.
Yes.
Okay. We're almost there, you guys.
Oh, that's done. We can move on to the next agenda item, which is FEMA.
Okay, well, I've got a presentation here for you. I'll try to keep it quick.
Have to open a hearing first, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I jumped the gun.
I now declare this public hearing open at 9:27 PM on April 24, 2025. This is an official public hearing before the Planning Commission of the City of Bandon for application 25-0110 or 010, an amendment to Bandon Municipal Code, Chapter 15.258. Jeez.
It's late.
Municipal Code Chapter 15.28 to adopt a pre-implementation compliance measure for floodplain development. Applicable criteria related to this action are listed in the staff report, available online through the city's website and as part of tonight's meeting agenda. Please address your comments to these criteria or the criteria you believe applying to this decision. Failure to raise an issue with a sufficient specificity is to afford this decision-making body and the parties involved in obtaining or involved an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal based on that issue. Thank you. Official notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission can consider laws, ordinance, court decisions, etc., without having them established as evidence in the hearing record. Copy of the minutes of this hearing, as well as the rules and procedures, will be available in the city offices staff report.
Okay, I'm ready. Next slide. This is another one that we had to do this evening because we have to have adopted by June 30th, enacted by June 30th. So I will briefly go through the background of this, give you some maps so you can see who in town is affected. We'll do a little overview of what the changes are. A discussion of some of the challenges we'll face, and then I'll give you a recommendation. I also handed to you a copy of the actual drafted ordinance, not the model ordinance. There are other copies over there. If you want to see them, I'll go through it in my presentation. Next slide. Okay, so the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA, is part of the Department of Homeland Security, which was created in 1978. FEMA provides flood insurance for properties located in the city's flood insurance rate map. We are the floodplain administrators. The city of Bandon is the floodplain administrator for the insurance program here locally. That requires that we voluntarily comply with their program. So in exchange for complying with the rules that they have, we are able to offer flood insurance to folks in Bandon. So we've been asked before, can we just throw this out? Well, we really can't, because properties that are backed by a mortgage are required to have flood insurance if they're in the floodplain, and other people may also want to have flood insurance even if they don't have a mortgage. So where all of this started was in 2009. There was a lawsuit initiated by the Portland Audubon Society that required FEMA to consider whether or not the way that Oregon regulates their floodplain had an impact on endangered species in Oregon. It took a number of years, but that group produced what we call the BIOP, the biological opinion, and it said that the current code creates impacts to flood storage, mostly from placing fill in our floodplain, water quality, so impacts of adding new impervious surface create pollutant runoff, and then riparian habitat, impacts from removing vegetation near rivers and streams. Next slide. Oops, I just closed mine, so hold on one second. So can you go to the next slide? I'm just gonna, you can just shuffle through these. This is North Bandon, the blue outline are all the affected properties. So that's Riverside Drive. Next slide. This is Old Town and then Ferry Creek. Next slide. This is the sort of South Ohio area. Again, I believe this is the continuation of Ferry Creek. The next one is the South Jetty. You can see that the entire South Jetty is implicated. There are also areas along Beach Loop Drive. They're like the lower portions of property by the ocean, and then that Johnson Creek area. Okay, next slide.
Question. Who decides what is in the floodplain and what is not? And who do you go
need
to when you
leave your
question?
I'm sorry, can you keep your questions until the public comment portion? We'll answer them then. What is changing through this? The city had to send out a Measure 56 notice. We're required to do that anytime there is an impact to a property where we're potentially taking away a right. The notice for anyone who received one, we sent it to everyone affected by this, has to say something like, this measure may affect your property value. However, I'll note that that's a state law that we have to say that. We don't know how this will affect your property value. However, we do know that we have to modify our practices in some way to avoid adverse effects on floodplain function to ensure what FEMA calls no net loss. So no net loss of those three things that we just talked about to all of those endangered species. The city considered this earlier. We defaulted into a permit by permit review. We did have the opportunity to adopt either a model ordinance, require a habitat assessment, or put a prohibition on floodplain development in the special flood hazard area. This evening, we're recommending to you that you go the permit by permit route. Next one. So I have learned a lot writing this presentation for you. One of the things that I learned is that communities in Oregon have two options to implement interim measures of the BIOP. One is actually adopting the model ordinance, which you can still require the habitat assessment, which is sort of a way of adopting clear and objective standards for this particular section in a way that is a little bit more stringent, or you can actually allow someone to put together a habitat assessment, making their own case for why something has a no net loss impact. I had thought those two were the same before, but it turns out we have an option. So I was able to review some other adopted codes and came up with what is attached. I've highlighted the portion for you that's relevant. Essentially, we would adopt all portions of the model code up until the point in time where it talks about the sort of specific standards for development in the floodplain. And instead, we'd adopt language that allows an applicant to submit a habitat assessment that meets all requirements of that National Marine Fisheries biological opinion. So sort of leaving it on them to come up with their own standards, their own mitigation plan, and decision for how they will mitigate development on their own parcel. So I'll read that into the record for folks who haven't had a chance to read that. So the habitat assessment, I can go through it if you're interested. Essentially, it assumes that there is a negative impact on all endangered species. Initially, this process or path was a little bit more complicated because you had to have a biologist determining which of the 30 endangered species were actually affected by this. Instead, they've gotten rid of that whole thing and just make the assumption that there's an adverse impact. They also have modified the requirements since we first received them to sort of lessen the burden of proof. However, they still use the term qualified professional and recommend we not define it because there's no such thing as a certified biologist. So we're still sort of unsure who will prepare these types of applications. The other thing to note is that this is not a long-term solution. FEMA has said that these are pre-implementation compliance measures, so they're expected to be in place for 2 years before they come up with an actual model code that everyone will have to follow. And so again, that model code is a bit more objective, but it's also more stringent. I'm going to just really briefly read that a habitat assessment would include 6 items: a project area description, an existing habitat description, a project description, so what it is you're actually doing, an environmental effects assessment, again, that already assumes that adverse effect, and a review of mitigation alternatives, so some suggestions for how you might mitigate the particular impact you are creating, and meeting that no net loss standard. Excuse me. And then an actual mitigation plan, so outlining specific actions that would demonstrate that no net loss. And I'll say all of these options are not great. Again, we are required to do this by FEMA. This is not something we're really choosing to do. In general, the challenge is this is a temporary measure. We are going to have to flex again 2 years from now and learn a new process. Staff are not trained in processing these types of applications. We are not biologists. I can't interpret technical biological impacts, so we're still trying to figure out how we would actually review and approve these types of applications. Floodplain development permits currently are free, but I can guarantee after looking through one of these, we're going to charge some money for doing this type of work. We also don't have the staffing capacity available to do this type of thing, but we don't really have a choice. And then we know that there is going to be some development impact to areas in Old Town and the Jetty neighborhood, just in general. So finally, I'm going to just make a recommendation that we adopt it as presented. I think I've lost my copy now. In the stack of things, but essentially we were recommending adding in language that specifically just calls out the requirement to do a habitat assessment, but doesn't adopt the portion of the model code that has strict standards. So I'll take questions while I find my copy.
All right, any questions? All right, move to public comment.
Hello, hello.
Hang on. We will now
Okay.
move on to public comment. This hearing is to be orderly and courteous. When it becomes your turn to testify, please state your name and address for the record. You will be given 5 minutes to share your comments. Please be mindful of your time. All right.
I don't have anyone here signed up to speak.
I haven't signed up, but I'd like to comment, if I may.
You can comment, but would you mind filling out the form afterwards? And you'll have to come up to the microphone so that we can record
I
it.
did that last time I was here, when you guys came up with a FEMA.
We need you to come up
You need to
here.
come to the podium, sir.
Sorry, we have other planning
And
commissioners.
how are we going to Zoom to your podium?
Please hold on and message the host if you'd like to speak.
Okay, I'd like to speak. My name's Lynn Ferry. My neighbor is Henry Slifer. We own property down there. I own a house down there. He owns a house down there, and we also own property down there. which we bought
Down there is where?
in the jetty, South Jetty. 1125 4th Street Southwest. I worked for a contractor, built the house down there. I'm a carpenter also, so there was no problem whatsoever. Went through all the rigmarole. Bev, who was in the planning department years ago, was a sweetheart. She got us through this. We've never had a flood since 1998. I haven't seen any walking fish on the property. I haven't seen any flying fish on the property. It's interesting that Audubon Society, who deals with flying animals and birds, sues FEMA. And FEMA, we know, is under scrutiny big time for what they've been doing back east. And then they pull this stuff here. All I can say is from looking at FEMA's organization and knowing people who work for them, this is not going to end. This is just the beginning. And this isn't just the city. This is the whole West Coast is going to be involved. Eventually, they're going to say, oh, well, we got to move this part of the city away because endangered species, and also we've got tsunamis and everything. We have a hard time selling property down there because everybody's so scared of the tsunamis. We have not had one. We've had warnings, but nothing. I asked, okay, all the way up the Coquille River is floodplain. That whole valley floods in the winter. So they're all interested in these fish that were endangered species, which is, okay, striped bass, you can catch all you want. Are they going to put up a net along the channel to keep those fish in the channel so they can't get out in the pasture? And when the water recedes, they die? You know, this whole thing with FEMA is basically a joke. We have regulations for building down there and also floodplains. The first floor has got to be 22 inches above the actual 100-year floodplain, which we've all done. But now we have a house down there that is barely off the ground, but hey, it was passed. But this is going to affect everything. It's going to affect any building, any repaving you guys do in your cities down there in the floodplain. It's going to affect Old Town. If something happens in Old Town, you want to rebuild the building or whatever, you don't think you're going to have to go to FEMA to get an okay to do that? You've got property that was given to you on the other side of the museum to put an auditorium in. That's going to be affected. You got money for that. Are you going to lose it? You know, this whole thing is just something else. We've got FEMA telling people back east during the hurricanes, oh, well, we don't have any money to help you. And that was a lie they found out. And then down in Florida, they go down through properties. Anybody that's got a sign of Trump for president is bypassed, and it goes to Harris for president to get anything they want. And that came out. I mean, FEMA is kind of a joke. They're not helping whatsoever in California for the fires or anything, even down there on the beaches.
1 minute.
Okay. But, you know, you got to rethink this. How is this going to affect the city? Not just us residents, but you guys, the city. It's going to cost you plenty. But anyhow, I'm done.
Thank you.
Next.
Henry.
I would also speak Zoom.
Henry Schleifer, 480 Lincoln Avenue. I live on the South Jetty, we're neighbors, and the only thing that I want to say here is a city official wanted to move out of the floodplain. She owns some property right across from the cheese factory. So she'd been down in the floodplain for many, many years. So she bought a house on 11th Street to be out of the floodplain. FEMA changed the rules and moved the floodplain and included even the hospital up there. So we don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. People are changing rules, and we're just vulnerable, and we just take it as it comes. It's awful. You know, I mean, I'm like Lynn. We haven't seen or heard of a floodplain in Bandon ever being flooded. We had water come across the jetty a couple of times, but it went down to the restaurant and that was it. So I was coming up from California one time and there was a tsunami coming up about a day ahead of us. Flooded Crescent City, went all the way across Highway 101, Brookings all the way across Highway 101, flooded all the boat basins, came to Bandon, and the water came up to a high tide, rolled back out, came up to a medium tide, and settled back down. And Alex Link was a board director here for years. I asked him when I first moved down here in the floodplain, I said, what do you think about a tsunami? He said, everybody coming up the coast from California, the water is like this. That's the beach. That's how flat it is. In Crescent City, you can actually walk out to the lighthouse without getting your feet wet during low tide. Bandon, he said, the first buoy is 50 feet down. Second buoy is 100 feet down. So the beach is like this. And the water comes and rolls in and rolls back out. And that's exactly what happened the last time a tsunami came through here. So I don't know what the big deal is. You know, FEMA's changed the rules, moved the floodplain, and it just involved more and more people into a danger zone that doesn't exist as far as we know. Thank you. Have fun with this because there's a lot of people that are going to get hurt real bad.
Thank you.
Next.
I don't have
Oh,
anyone
can
from chat. What's
I'm a guy on Zoom and I would like to get a word on. Can I maybe do this sometime?
Can we just get your name and address for the record if you want us to notify you of the
Sure.
record decision? And you can either say it into the record or you can write it into the chat.
Okay, my name is Manfred Wiesel. I'm a property owner, 3310 Beach Loop Drive. That's next to the Windermere. Okay? And you can put it into the record. I'm an engineer by trade and I heard enough about maps tonight that I would really like to know who defines the maps for the flood zone. Because when I look at my back, the surface does not really match up with the stuff showed on the map. Okay? And who do I need to go to get a map changed? These were my questions. Thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to answer those. The Federal Emergency Management Agency sets the boundaries of that through these firm maps, the flood insurance rate maps that the city adopts maybe every 10 years or so. If you want to pursue a change to that, you would have to file.
Excuse me. First, I would like to get a copy. How do I get a copy?
Sure, you can file a public records request on the city's website. Or come into City Hall, we have paper copies and you can file a public records request, we can get you a copy of that.
Okay.
And then if you want to make a change, you would submit an application to us, but FEMA is the decision maker on that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right.
I apologize because I did not have my copy earlier. I got lost in my paper, but I wanted you to know that after looking at other ordinances, I'm recommending the change here be that we're really adding in No permit granted herein shall be construed to guarantee compliance with otherwise applicable federal rules and regulations, including the Endangered Species Act, and language about, in addition to any information necessary to satisfy this chapter, a permit application must include a flood habitat assessment report from a qualified professional evaluating any negative impact to the floodplain functions and identifying appropriate mitigation measures to ensure that any development will be in compliance with the 2016 National Marine Fisheries Services biological opinion, no net loss standards. All mitigation recommendations contained within the qualified report shall be included as permit conditions of approval. That essentially puts the onus on the applicant to develop the flood report consistent with those ESA standards.
Dana, this is to take effect immediately upon the council approving it?
So we can set it for June 30th. Technically, our city charter says that an ordinance takes effect 30 days after it's enacted. And so this council would have to have set a sort of emergency to have it come into effect earlier than that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other commissioners have questions?
I just back to basics. The reason we're adopting this is because in order for these properties to be eligible for FEMA coverage, the city's required to adopt this ordinance. Is that correct? Or something
yes,
like
it's correct. In that the city's in order for the city to provide flood insurance to anybody in the flood zone inside city limits, we have to adopt these ordinances.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
That's all.
All right. Hearing no other comments. I don't think we need to continue this hearing further, so I would like to have a motion to close this hearing.
So move. Can we close the hearing?
Second.
All right, motion to close the hearing and seconded. Roll call or verbal?
Do you want to make a motion to make a recommendation to
Oh.
the city council?
Well, we need,
You can deliberate if you have
no, we
any
need
particular
to,
thoughts.
all in favor of closing the hearing,
I think
public hearing.
they just did that.
Okay,
No, we haven't voted on that.
Oh,
hold
got
on.
it. Sorry. I'll not be.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes. Aye.
Yes.
Motion passed. Now we can deliberate.
Would you reread what you said?
Oh, just about what your recommendation would be. If you wanted to recommend approval as written, you would say, I recommend approval to the city council to adopt the code as written, or the ordinance as written in ordinance 1669.
Didn't you just say something else about putting the onus on the?
That is that's part of this attachment that I gave you that says ordinance 1669.
Okay.
I move that we recommend the city council approve ordinance 1669. Is that right?
Yep, you did good.
I second it.
Okay. Motion made and seconded to move on to the city council for approval. Roll call vote?
Sure thing. Commissioner Orsi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jerkowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Norman,
Yes.
Commissioner Frey,
Yes.
Commissioner Pressler.
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you.
We're so close.
Moving right along. We got another hearing on a master plan development. I now declare this public hearing open at 9:54 p.m. on April 24, 2025. This is an official public hearing before the Planning Commission of the City of Bandon for application 25-011, adoption of a new charter and abandoned municipal code master plan developments. Applicable criteria related to this action are listed in the staff report, available online through the city's website and as part of tonight's meeting agenda. Please address your comments to these criteria or the criteria you believe apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford this decision-making body and the parties involved in an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal based on that issue. Official notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission can consider laws, ordinance, court decisions, etc., without having them established as evidence in the hearing record. A copy of the minutes of this hearing, as well as the rules and procedures, will be available in the city offices. Staff report.
Okay, Nikki, can you pull up my presentation and I'll keep it brief. I know we've talked about this one before. So this is the master plan development ordinance. If you can go to the next slide. The reason why we're talking about this, which you guys asked me last time, was we had a directive from the city council to consider this ordinance when it came up during our annual joint work session to discuss a work program. They wanted to be able to facilitate housing on large properties that may have unique opportunities or constraints. What the master plan development chapter would allow is some additional flexibility in zoning and land use that would produce some sort of public benefit. Those public benefits are listed in the code. We've read through them before. The sort of changes that we've made since we reviewed this in work session is we've provided a longer period for the process, and my planning mentor always said the process is the plan. So the most important part is coming here and having public hearings, allowing the public to weigh in on what they like and don't like. And the way that we've written this ordinance is that it would not fall under the 120-day time frame, so the city could essentially work on this for as long as they wanted to get the right project. This also provides the city with greater control over large-scale development, and I mean, I see it as a win-win for Bandon, because what it's going to do is allow you to have control over what something looks like, where things go, in a way that our code wouldn't allow right now, and may also allow for some really unique development opportunities. So just to go over the process, I'm making a recommended change here from the 10 acres based on some internal and external feedback that we received, that we changed 10 acres to 7 acres for any sort of mixed use development, so anything other than housing, and then any property over 3 acres for housing only. So kind of splitting off housing and then and mixed use. We've also recommended that there be a pre-application requirement prior to applying for this type 4 decision to allow staff to weigh in and the city council to weigh in about whether or not they'd want to even initiate the ordinance. So the way that this would work is someone would submit for what we're calling an area plan through a type 4 permit. That's a legislative public hearing. So it would go to the Planning Commission first and then go to the City Council. That area plan would be adopted as a section in the city's code. So sort of identifying that there is a specific area plan for whatever this parcel is. And then after that area plan is adopted by the city council, any sort of actual development of the site would require what we're calling a detailed development plan, but could also be known as site plan review, very similar. That would be done through a type 2 staff decision. So we'd notify property owners within 100 feet, and they'd have the opportunity to appeal to city council if they felt like that concept plan was not being properly implemented. I'm going to make another recommendation. In the original submittal, the feedback I've been given about technical reports is that things like geotech reports and traffic impact analyses and other sorts of technical information should be moved to the type 2 decision, because the area plan is more like a concept. It's the land use, it's the standards, but it's not really drilling into the details. What the code would allow is that during that type 4 process, we could request preliminary reports or studies, but have the actual data come in at the time of development. And the reason why I think that's important is that they actually have 5 years between the concept plan and the development plan, and things change. So you don't really want to adopt something based on a TIA that might be 5 years old. So what's allowed? What would we allow? I also would remove the language that said can't be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and keep it a little more positive and just say must be consistent with any land division statutory requirements and must be consistent with any comprehensive plan. It has to have a public benefit. We have to have sufficient utilities to serve the use, and we can require any easements or land conveyances that we would need in order to preserve any sort of wetlands or other important public spaces. And then, like I said, we would review the impact, and if any sort of potential impact is suspected, the Planning Commission will have the opportunity to request a condition of approval be added to further study the issue prior to construction. And then, so finally, I think I've gone through these. Detailed development plan would have to meet all the requirements of the area plan. If you set any specific conditions of approval, those are going to be looked at during every site review. The dedicated land, if they want to dedicate land to us, we have to accept it. So they can't just dedicate it and then, you know, have it sit out there. We've run into that recently. So part of that any open space or common space areas, we will require a maintenance plan and an HOA to maintain those. The area plan expires after 5 years if you haven't filed a type 2 application. The city can grant a 1-year extension if we feel like, or if the comprehensive plan hasn't changed during that time. And then also important to note that if someone had an approved concept plan or area plan and they wanted to make any changes to that, it would be through the same process. So things wouldn't be changed behind the scene. They'd come back to the Planning Commission and City Council for a decision, and then same with that detailed development plan. So I think I've covered it all. And do you have any questions?
Can you please elaborate on the decision to go from 10 acres to 7 acres and 3 acres?
Sure. Well, one of the recommendations was to have a carve out if the property was just for housing, because 10 acres is kind of big for a housing project, and we may want some flexibility just around housing types. In particular, I think I can speak to the Ocean Park development that the city and the school are working on. There's an opportunity to provide a variety of housing types, and that property is only 7-something acres.
Correct. I could elaborate.
Yeah.
As you're aware, city staff has been working in collaboration with the school district and a private developer on developing a concept for workforce housing. When coming to Bandon and looking at the existing land use regulations and restrictions, it effectively limited the ability to facilitate this type of housing within the site that we were looking at. That led to the discussions among staff to propose this concept. It's one that I have prior experience in implementing in the form of area development plan, specific plan, PUD, they're all the same. But it allows for additional flexibility to deal with unique site constraints and to accommodate the development needs to maximize the buildability of the site and to ensure that it is cost effective and made available to the target population, such as workforce housing. The site that we are working on is essentially the test case. The concepts have been in development for the last 1.5 years. And as Dana indicated, there's been multiple iterations of that. But one thing's consistent is that the site, I believe, is between 7 and 8 acres, at least phase 1 for that project. So in an effort to ensure we had that flexibility is why we are recommending a reduction in the acreage requirement.
There's no phase 4, is there?
No, there's only 2 phases.
And so what about larger than 7 acres?
That would fall into the same category. We'd be able to entertain or apply this type of development code.
You got flexibility up to 15, 20 acres?
Correct.
Okay.
If it's just residential, it's 3.
Yeah, residential would be 3 or more, and then a mixed use would be 7 or more. Oh, and the housing is just like if you had a 3-acre site and you wanted to do a sort of unique housing development, you could use the code for that.
And conceptually, I can
Yeah.
convey this now. It's not necessarily in its final form as to the reason why we haven't unveiled it, but it would currently include three different housing types. You'd have single family, detached residential that would abut the existing single family residential for compatibility and massing purposes. In the center part of the development, we would have a townhome product. And then towards the, I believe, easterly corner, towards the rear of the development would have an apartment complex. And the idea was to target a variety of different housing needs. One would be startup families with young kids that could move into the townhome product, more established families that can move into the single family detached. And then you have housing that would accommodate seasonal or temporary employees in the apartment development. And that necessarily wouldn't be able to be accomplished here currently with the zoning restrictions. So this allows for the flexibility to accommodate that.
All right. Thank you.
I have a terminology question. Is concept plan and area plan synonymous?
Well, yeah, I mean, I went back and forth. That's my fault. I realized in the presentation it says concept plan. I went back and forth calling it the conceptual area plan, the concept plan, the area plan. I shouldn't have done that. It's just an area plan. I think that's the cleanest way to describe it because it's a little bit more than a concept. I mean, we should have standards drilled down where the streets are, but you know, when you go to actually construct, sometimes things shift slightly. So it's conceptual in that sense. But I'm going to stick with area plan.
And my apologies, my name is Tori Contreras. I'm the city manager and previously had 30 years of
Get your address.
community development experience. I will include that in the record. Thank you.
Dana, can we go back to your two recommended changes? One was the sizes. We're talking about 7 acres and 3 acres. What was the other change you recommend, staff is recommending?
The other change, sorry, the version I just brought up was a little bit kooky. Is to move the point at which there are additional reports or studies needed. So my recommendation is to, within the area plan, we can request preliminary reports to evaluate potential impacts. So that could be, you know, like not a true traffic impact assessment, but, you know, just a traffic analysis, like what issues might we face? You know, you can get some preliminary data on that. But my recommendation to move it to the actual detailed development plan is that a sort of significant period of time might go by between the area plan and actual implementation. And I think you'd want to know the impact at the time of construction, not the time of conception. Yeah, so you could require, I think the idea is like, you can get an idea from the applicant or from the application about what sort of potential impacts there might be, and then make a condition of approval to require a sort of full-blown plan or report or study at the time of detailed development plan.
And that would be a type 2 decision?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll clarify too that generally with type 2 decisions, we save those for things that are more technical in nature. So our city engineer would really be the one helping us review those technical documents.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right. We will now move into public comment. This hearing is to be orderly and courteous. When it becomes your turn to testify, please state your name and address for the record. You will be given 5 minutes to share your comments. Please be mindful of your time.
Shawna?
Hi, my name is Shauna Schmer. I'm the superintendent for Bandon School District. As Tori mentioned, we have been working on a project for about the last year and a half on working primarily for workforce housing. As you know, with the lack of housing within our region, and if you look at the enrollment in just our school district, we have lost probably 300 kids in the last 9 years. So, and part of that is because we don't have housing for middle class individuals. We're great with retirement, and we're great with people that have a lot of money that want to come here and retire, or that want to come and visit. But our middle class families that work here and provide services, there's a lack of housing for that. You also probably are aware that more than half of our police officers cannot live or reside within the city limits because of the lack of workforce housing. So we're hoping that this is something that you will consider and recommend to have happen, that we can have this as a priority within our region and actually become a model for other communities, to see that a district and a city working together to help a problem that's nationwide becoming an issue. And hopefully we can be a model to have this happen for us, and we can recruit quality employees, because we're starting to see that within downtown restaurants not having enough employees, and eventually that will happen in our school district and other places. So I'm hoping that you will see this as an advantage for Bandon, and also a model that other communities will look at how we can do this for workforce housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I don't have anyone else signed up.
Well, I've signed up. Is it okay? I'm probably going to be pretty unpopular for this comment. This is too late in the evening to consider such a very important idea. Far too late. I don't see anybody on this dais, and I don't mean to be insulting, that is under 60 years old, and it's now 10:10. I don't know what time you guys got up, but I wouldn't doubt that there's a little bit of brain fog going on up here. I think this should be delayed to another time. And also, I have a very big concern about the noticing that is going out to property owners in Bandon about these kinds of decisions that are major. And it has been the practice of the city for many years to send out letters through the United States mail. And I would like to see that that is happening. I did not receive any notice by mail about the proposal for the previous plan by the developer that's just a stone's throw from my house. And that's not right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any additional comments, staff?
I'll just let everyone know that we follow the noticing procedures in the Bandon Municipal Code. So if you do want to change those, that would be in Title 16. For all text amendments, we post them on the city's website 20 days in advance. We post them on the Department of Land Conservation and Development's plan acknowledgement, I can't remember, PAPA portal, 35 days in advance, and you can actually sign up to be notified of any changes in Bandon through that portal. And then we are required to post notice in the newspaper ahead of the city council hearing, but we don't send notice to individual property owners for type 4 decisions, only for quasi judicial decisions. And I'll just note for the Ocean Terrace amendment she's referring to, we normally wouldn't notice for that, but because we knew that neighbors were concerned about the issue, we did actually extend a notice to folks within 250 feet of the parcel. But yeah, these have all been posted on the city's website. We've been talking about this at planning commission meetings. I think this might be our 5th time talking about it. So I hope folks are aware if they're tuning in.
Yeah, I agree with Dane. I especially, I'm glad, thank you for clarifying. This has been properly noticed, and we've been talking about this master plan development for many months now, off and on. So I don't know what to tell. I'll save that for commissioner comments. But yeah, thank you, Dana. I think we've discussed this enough, unless other commissioners have some specific questions or issues to bring up.
All right, any other comments? All right. this point, I would like to entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
I so move. Close.
Second,
I have a motion to close the public hearing and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
aye.
All right, now we have commissioner comments, or we can have a motion of some sort.
If I might also just clarify for anyone who wants to think about it and have more time, the city council will hold a public hearing on this on June 2nd. So there'll be another opportunity to provide input.
So we have to have a motion to.
You have to have a
move
motion
it
tonight, but I was just
and move it
thinking,
forward.
yes, there's still an opportunity.
And with conditions or denial of request, so.
So moved.
Which
Second.
one?
Moving forward.
Move to the city council with our recommendation of approval.
Okay,
Second.
motion and second to approve moving these master plan development to city council.
And I'll note, you're talking about the amended version that we just talked about this evening, not the original.
The amended version.
Okay,
Amended version, yes.
perfect.
All right,
Roll call.
roll call.
Yes.
Commissioner Orsi, Vice Chair Jerkowski,
Aye.
Commissioner Norman,
Yes.
Commissioner Frey,
Yes.
Commissioner Pressler.
Yes.
Oh, good job, you guys.
Okay, staff update.
You're not gonna like my update this evening. I'm about to give you more bad news, but our wonderful planner Nicolette Klein has put in her notice that she will also be leaving us at the end of May. So just wanted to let everybody know and thank her for all of her time and dedication to the planning department. I know that she will be missed, not only by me and all the staff here, but by our planning commission and our community. So I'm just going to move on from that because that is a bummer. And then the more positive news I wanted to share is that we also received notice from the Abandoned Beach Hotel that they have pulled their first building permit. So that project that I think the Planning Commission first talked about in 2017 is finally moving forward a little bit. I don't have much information other than they pulled a permit. It'll still probably be a while before any sort of construction begins. But those are the two updates that I have for you. And let me know if you have any questions.
Okay.
I knew there would just be silence on Nikki's departure. And I'll thank her privately for all of the work that she's done.
Commissioner comments?
I have some questions, quick questions. Anything about the grocery store outlet?
Grocery outlets permit, if they don't pull a building permit by, I think it's the middle of May, that project will be dead.
Okay.
Yeah.
And any update on Gravel Point?
No update on Gravel Point other than, I think what we've talked about before. So the project, all of the entitlement phase is complete. They have started submitting some preliminary, utility plans for city staff to review.
Okay, these were from a citizen that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more commissioner comments?
Yes, thank you, Planning Department, as always. Thank you, Nikki, for your service also, along with Dana. It's going to be hard shoes to fill, I'm sure. I think I'm not sure Dawn might know this, Chair Starbuck. Whoever is doing the grading of the parking lot down at South Jetty, it looks really nice. Great
That
improvement.
was city, I think.
City, looks great, Tori, thank you. And I'm not sure. I mean, this comes up from time to time. People imply that they weren't aware of important issues that impact them and the city. And I don't know. I don't know what to tell them other than to go on the city website where the information is almost always. We send out the noticing requirements per our code. We can't go to everybody's door and knock and let them know there's a meeting tonight about a rezoning amendment potential. I don't know what to tell folks. If anyone has any ideas for future discussion, how do we reach more people and let them know? I thank you to the participants tonight, especially the person that's still here and the ones on Zoom. That's another thing. I realize that there are specific issues that impact people, but when people leave early and that they might miss something very important, and then once again be unaware of it. So I know this is a particularly long meeting, but appreciate everyone that participated and stayed in till the end. Thank you.
I also think not everyone is connected digitally or with the internet. There's a sizable percentage of our US population that is not.
I can't believe that. What do you tell people like that? You've got to get to the 21st century. Sorry.
I think we can maybe make a note in the future to put code amendments in the city manager's newsletter, because that's a paper document that I believe all utility users receive. And so perhaps that's a good way to get the word out about big ones.
That would be a big way to do it because the utility statement goes to everybody.
Yeah.
That's on city services.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yes.
Good idea.
We make Tori's letter booklet.
Make him work for his position.
Yeah.
Just looking for good material to include.
That is true.
That should take up a good quarter section.
That is true. That is true.
Tori novella of the month. I like that.
Yeah, I realized I did not defer to Solon, who does have some updates for you. So when you're done with commissioner comments, if you don't mind, she just has one thing she wants to share. So if I didn't know if Commissioner Pressler had a comment.
No, I do not. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. I'm short and
How's your caffeine intake doing?
running real low. Okay, I'm gonna make this short and sweet. I'm gonna read off my list. Okay, so my April Planning Commission updates. For those who applied to be on the committee for the Bandon's Housing Code Audit and Update, your applications have been sent for approval to the City Council, and an appointment will be happening at the May City Council meeting, I'm pretty sure. Second of all, so we now have an online open house for the City Park Master Plan. If you were unable to attend the first open house for the City Park Master Plan or have additional thoughts that came up after the fact, you're in luck. On the city's website, under Planning, then Long Range Planning Projects, and then the City Park Master Plan, there's an online open house where you can see the slides that were presented at the open house by Doherty Landscape Architects, and a link to a wonderful online open house that provides an interactive map where you can provide suggestions or leave questions on specific areas of the park. I highly recommend checking it out, even if you don't have anything that you want to share particularly. It's just a really good open house site and a really nice format. Our new colleague Shannon set it up, and I'm very proud of it for her. Also speaking about the city park, come out this Saturday at 11 a.m. to volunteer at our Arbor Day Park cleanup. There will be snacks and refreshments provided. Just bring some closed-toed shoes, maybe a jacket or two, and an enthusiasm to leave the park better than we found it. And coming up on May 19th at 1:30 p.m. here at City Hall, there will be a joint work session held for the Housing Code Audit and Update. And additionally approaching is another joint work session for the Transportation System Plan Update on June 9th at 1:30 p.m. also taking place at City Hall. Thank you, and you're welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to say anything?
Yes, I think it's determined that we're at this hour no longer competent.
10:25, we're dismissed.
You blew it, Nick. Nobody got it right. Didn't even come close to
I
9:50.
tried. I
It's-
tried.
It's 1:23 where I am.
Yeah, same here.
You must be on the West Coast or East Coast rather with me.
Jan, you're amazing, but please go to bed now.
Thank
Night,
you.
everybody. Thank you.